family. From the group who brought you the hit songs, 81 Million Votes, My Ass, MAGA Nation, and Trader Joe, comes a brand new single. Daddy Trump is available everywhere, and we need you to make some noise. Go download it on iTunes and let's run it up to #1 on the charts for President Trump.
So I just want to thank everybody very much. Thank you.
Get ready. You're about to get bombed by the truth bomber.
Didn't raise y'all, but I had to step up. Put the Ayatollah on a no-cap checker. He calls me Daddy Trump. NATO knows what's up. Why they play pretend, I call they bluff. Kim and Vlad acting bad, throwing fits on the floor. BB screaming from the back, saying, Daddy, there's a war. I walk in like Sunday school.
Happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare.
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is
Search and rescue operations are entering the fifth day in Central Texas as the death toll tops 100 from Friday's flash flood. More than 24 people remain missing, among them 10 campers and 1 camp counselor from Camp Mystic, the all-girls camp in Kirk County. President Trump says he will visit the area on Friday.
Elon Musk announcing the formation of a new political party.
From the president on Truth Social saying, quote, I'm saddened to watch Elon Musk go completely off the rails, essentially becoming a train wreck over the past 5 weeks.
According to DHS, assaults on immigration enforcement officers are up almost 700% when compared to the same time last year.
The ambush in Alvarado, Texas, which appears to be the most coordinated of all the recent attacks on ICE. That attack began with at least 10 people all shooting fireworks at the Prairie Detention Center. Around 10 minutes later, 1 or 2 of them broke off from the main group and began spray painting the facility and vehicles parked there. A police officer arrived responding to a 911 call, and at that point, one of the group, who had apparently hidden in trees near the facility, opened fire, hitting the officer in the neck, while another attacker, also across the street, fired dozens of rounds at officers. 10 people have now been charged with attempted murder.
There will be no amnesty. The mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way, and we move the workforce towards automation and 100% American participation, which again, with 34 million people, able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do that fairly quickly. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily. We're here live in Washington, D.C. Today, of course, is July 8th, 2025, Anno Domini. And once again, we are told now, all the way from the heights of the United States Attorney General, that the Epstein case is closed. There's no more information on Jeffrey Epstein. Why do you guys keep asking about Jeffrey Epstein? She says that we don't need to hear about Jeffrey Epstein ever again. You know what this sounds like? I'm going to tell you exactly what this sounds like. Pam Bondi sounds like Hillary Clinton right now, saying, at this point, what does it even matter, when she was talking about Benghazi? All right? This is not how you treat the American people. This is not how you treat basic communications. This is not how you treat your voters and your supporters. And certainly, by the way, myself personally, I feel very angry, upset, used, every word you want to know, from having gone to the White House and receiving this binder full of baloney that was completely publicly available information already, that we were told was new information on Epstein. It wasn't. We were told that more information was coming. There wasn't. You claimed that you had the list on your desk. You didn't. And none of it came out. And now when people have the obvious response of asking a question about it, you get in their faces and you tell them to stop asking. No. You sound like Hillary Clinton right now, and this isn't what you promised the American people. But I'll tell you someone, since we are here, and yesterday we did a huge push regarding amnesty. And I'll tell you someone that does sound good right now, and that's Secretary Brooke Rollins. Because Secretary Brooke Rollins got up there, and what did she say? Well, she came out and she said there will be no amnesty, and the mass deportations will continue. And go and look at that incredible ICE raid, the sweep that went through MacArthur Park there in Los Angeles, California, the largest sanctuary city on the West Coast, an absolute hub of MS-13 activity. That's exactly what we want. From the Ag Secretary, from the entire administration, there will be no amnesty. They are all going home. They're going home. You can't stay here anymore. It's done. It's all done. And to all the people out there in big ag world with the Monsantos and the GMOs and the rest of it, I'm sorry, but you're either going to have to hire American or go out of business. Because frankly, I don't care. Cut all the subsidies to anyone who's using an illegal alien. Cut them tomorrow. I'll be right back. Jack Posobiec.
What America First truly means.
Welcome to the Second American Revolution.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec, here we are back. Human Events Daily, Washington, D.C. Folks, did you know that in the last 6 weeks, 86 million AT&T users had their name, address, and social security numbers leaked? But that the CCP is harvesting massive volumes of America's personal data to train DeepSeek and other AI systems. Well, when you're online doing the work like I am, you need digital camouflage. And that's why I've partnered with our newest show sponsor, Patriot Protect. Let me tell you about them. Patriot Protect removes your personal data from the internet. And a guy like me, this is absolutely necessary. So whether you're talking Google, Amazon, Apple, your personal data will be wiped so that scammers and cyber criminals and, yes, swatters, like the ones who tried to come after my family, they will not and cannot find your data, and you can take back your security and privacy. Once Patriot Protect scans and scrubs your personal information, they'll continuously monitor your info to make sure every new instance or personal data breach is eliminated immediately. I'm talking 24/7 protection for the cost of keeping the porch lights on. The only thing worse than getting hacked is knowing that you could have stopped it and didn't take action when you could have. So go to patriotprotect.com/POSO and use promo code POSO for 15% off a yearly subscription. That's patriotprotect.com/POSO and use promo code POSO for 15% off a yearly subscription. patriotprotect.com/POSO. All right, folks, very excited to bring on now our next guest. Folks, we've got the great Congressman Byron Donalds from the great state of Florida joining us now. Congressman, how are you?
Doing good. How you doing?
Now, Congressman, I have to ask, do we have an exact count on the number of alligators that are there at Alligator Alcatraz? Do they need to be taken care of, or is it kind of a fluctuation? How does that work exactly?
Look, to be honest with you, man, we have no real idea how many gators are out there. But I think the thing that most people don't know is the pythons. You know, there's a python infestation out there, and there's significantly more pythons than there are alligators. No doubt about it.
Wait, so this is actually, it's so funny you mentioned that, because this is something I'm a guy from the Philadelphia area. You and I have talked about that before, but I used to go down to Florida quite a bit. Disney World, we had some family that lived down there, and pythons when I was a kid were not a thing, but this is like a new thing in the Everglades. I've just been reading about this, right? They're like an invasive species.
Oh, very real. Totally invasive. Their population growth is something we can't even track. Like we simply can't track how many pythons are out there. I think like one python can have 200 eggs at any given time. The birth cycle is very fast. I mean, it is a real thing. I didn't think we were going to talk about pythons per se, but we're here. Pythons, right, as we understand it, the pythons are actually taking out other wildlife in the glades. They're just eating it. There's that many. So we have guys out there that go hunt python. That's what they will do. They'll go out and take people on python hunts right now.
I'm not even going to lie. I totally went down the python rabbit hole the other day, and I found this python hunting Instagram, and I was going all the way in. So I don't know, maybe there's something there. You take the python hunters, but then you clean up one swamp, but then you go to DC and clean up, I don't know, or I guess Tallahassee in your case. Maybe there's something there. I'm not sure, but I had no idea how bad it had gotten.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, maybe we need some pythons in DC, probably keep people out of there.
Okay, I see. Put the shoe on the other foot a little bit there. There you go. Well, when it comes down to it, though, Congressman, when we look at everything that Florida has done and the way that the Florida delegation, everyone has put together this new program regarding illegal aliens, I've heard from the liberals, I've heard from reporters, they say, oh, America doesn't want this, America doesn't support it. And yet I look at the polls, and every single poll that's coming up has been deportations, deportations, deportations. Even in states like Florida, California, Texas, states that are closer to the border, states that are closer to the South, Southern Hemisphere, they want all of this. What kind of response are you seeing from your constituents and the people of Florida regarding this?
I think people are happy that the state of Florida is taking this very seriously, to the extent that the new facility was set up to help deport criminal illegal aliens and a lot of the people that Joe Biden let in over the last 4 years. I mean, that's what's overwhelmed every city in the country. That's where all the crime has come from, not in total, but definitely in part. And so I think people will just want to see action happen quickly. They don't want to see political statements that don't go anywhere. They want to see this stuff get done. That's why, I know there was a lot of people who were concerned about the spending side of the one big beautiful bill, and I'm concerned about the spending side. But at the end of the day, we had to get Tom Homan and Kristi Noem $150 billion in order to start these deportations and have the manpower, the bed space, and the logistical capabilities to start that mission. And it's going to be an arduous mission. It's going to take several years. We're going to have to be consistent about it. And I think on a broader level, when you talk about the need for deportations, it's a real conversation about what is immigration going to be in the United States. Are we going to be haphazard, how we have been the last 30 years, depending on if it's Democrats in control or Republicans in control? Or are we finally going to say, we're going to have secure borders, we're going to have one pathway in, you comply with the pathway in, or you're not allowed to come into the United States? And I think that if we are consistent with immigration policy overall and securing the border, then the American people might be open to talk about visas. And I stress only then might they be open to talking about it. So we have to be consistent. The American people are demanding no less. A lot of people can't stay here. They can't stay here and just think that they can live in our, go to our hospitals, get a welfare, work in the shadows, and think that's going to support the American way of life and the things that the American people want to see happen in the United States. It's just not happening. We can't allow that to continue. So there have to be deportations, and we're going to follow through.
And by the way, that's one of the things that whenever I go out and talk about this to people, I always bring up that it seems that people say they look at it and they say, oh, it's this almost a romantic description of, oh, they're coming from such hardship and they're coming to the United States and we've got to help them. And, think of the poem on the foot of the Statue of Liberty, and et cetera, et cetera. But then I say, what about the people who live here? What about the people that are actually in our cities and in our towns and trying to go out for these jobs and trying to actually go out there, trying to buy a home if you're a first-time homeowner, if you're or if you're trying to have to compete? You have to compete for space. How about when my kid needs stitches, I don't want to have to wait for 3 hours in the ER. And people just don't talk about it. They just don't talk about the massive stress this 10 plus million people is putting on all of our systems. And by the way, that affects you if you're working class, it affects you if you're middle class, and it certainly benefits you if you're in that top 1%.
Well, I'll give you one example, and you touched on it a little. Education. So let's take a look at the last 4 years. 4 years ago, COVID, in a lot of blue states, definitely blue cities, kids were kept out of the classroom for almost 2 years. So they weren't allowed in the classroom. So American children were already falling behind. Then Joe Biden let in, last count, 1.4 million children just children, let them into the United States. Well, where do you think those kids were? A lot of them were in American classrooms spread all across the United States. So now you have a kid in an American classroom who doesn't speak English, who by any metric is 2 to 4 grade levels behind at age, and they're in the same classroom with an American student who was already kept out of the classroom for 2 years. So that kid's already behind. You brought in an immigrant child who's further behind, putting more strain on that school system. And so what happens? American kids who are poor, white, black, Hispanic, they're not even having full access to the resources they need to catch up, because we're now having to allocate resources to children who were allowed into the country by Joe Biden through illegal immigration. Like, that's really how dastardly this stuff is. And to your point, people have, I think the left wants to promote this romantic view of people trying to come into the country and better themselves. But the reality is the drug cartels were making $12 billion a year trafficking people into the United States. You had NGOs who were profiting, who were literally profiting in terms of getting more government largesse to help support illegal immigration on both sides of the border, both in the United States and south of the border. And who was suffering the most? Working class people in America.
Absolutely. Congressman, quick break. I'd love to hold you over there because this is just such an important conversation. Congressman Byron Donalds right here with us, Human Events Daily. Be right back.
You know, you talk about influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, he's done a great job.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec, here we are back. Human Events Daily, Washington, D.C. We're on with Congressman Byron Donalds, and we're talking about this issue of illegal immigration and the fact that President Trump's big, beautiful bill has just been passed. I was there at the White House when it was signed on the 4th of July. How fitting was that? The stealth bombers flew over us. I was on War Room at the time because we were live, and I was there with my wife, my two boys, and we're all looking up, seeing how great they were. And of course, Tanya Tay, she goes, now, which ones are the bombers? I said, they're the big ones, baby. Those are the big ones. And I say, there's only so much mansplaining that I can do, especially when I'm live on air. But, you know, it was a great day. But I wanted to get Congressman Byron Donalds on here because you were one of the chief, I would say, just quarterbacks for this thing all the way through its passage and the importance of that. And I get, by the way, I'm totally with all the people who say we need to do something about spending. I'm totally open. I think that's a serious argument. I think that's a serious concern. The issue for me is that if we don't do something about the mass invasion, 10 million plus, some people are saying it's 20 maybe, I don't know. But the point being is if we don't do something about that first, that'll destroy all of our systems well before any of the debt does.
Yeah, I think you're right. We had to deliver. We were going to deliver. It's actually interesting through this whole process. In the House, we were, dealing with this for really about 7 to 10 months to get ready for the president signing the bill and doing all the work. The border stuff was really not even up for debate. No members challenged it. There was no real hard debates on what we were going to do when it came to securing the southern border and giving the president the resources that he needs. So that was the easy part. Where it really got tough was spending. And I'll tell you, even though as Republicans, it was universal, we were going to secure the border and do what needed to be done to begin deportations out of the United States, because that has to happen. It's just the way it is. The spending piece is of real concern. We have a ticking time bomb, if you will, and that's called the bond markets. What it is costing the United States to borrow money, the cost of those borrowings continue to rise because not just of the amount of debt that we have, but it's how reckless our deficits are. And so even though one big beautiful bill is done and we got that to the president's desk, he signed it. I watched the ceremony from home. It was a great ceremony. There's a lot more work that we have to do in Washington. We got to get long-term deficits under control. And what the reason why reconciliation is really helpful in that is because you don't have to even deal with the Democrats. I'll tell you right now, if it weren't for 10 members of the House and a handful of senators, we would have cut significantly more spending. We absolutely would have. Because if we continue to borrow money at this velocity, it will begin to increase the cost of capital for every American. And when I say cost of capital, what I mean is what it costs you to borrow money for a home, what it costs you to borrow money for a car, credit card rates. If you're a small business, your working capital lines of credit, what it costs for you to borrow money for equipment, etc. The costs will go up on that, and that begins to create an almost insurmountable burden on the quality of life and also on purchasing power in the United States. And at the end of the day, when you're talking economics, it's really about the purchasing power for individuals. How far does their dollar go? How many goods or services can they buy with that dollar? And if the cost of our debt continues to rise, it will have an upward pressure on frankly, the quality of life, and it will decrease purchasing power in the United States. So we have to get serious in Washington. Glad we got the president's agenda through. We had to get that done. But spending is a long-term issue. we're going to have to start peeling back that onion. And it's going to take time. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's going to take time for us to do it, but we have to be committed to it.
No, that's exactly right. And this is the same issue that Japan ran into. They call it the lost decade, when their spending just completely blew past their debt to GDP ratio. And so people go back in the 1980s and they said, wow, Japan's growth was so huge. And everybody said Japan was going to overtake everybody. And they're crushing us in the car market. Obviously, President Trump talks about that all the time with what they were able to do with their manufacturers. This is how we got Toyota and Honda and all the rest of it. But then what happened? Their debt got so high that I actually just pulled it as you were speaking. So their current debt to GDP ratio, even today, even after they brought it down, it's still 250%. Ours, while it's high, it's one of the high. Ours is still top 10. Ours is 125. Theirs is 250. So this is something that, as you said, Congressman, it's something that if it gets out of hand once, it's going to take a really long time to be able to tame that. And I did like a CPAC Japan, last year, and I remember you go to buy a soda and say, what do you mean this thing costs 10,000 yen to buy a soda? So what is that? That's like, it's like $3. And you realize what it does to your currency. You realize what it does to your country and your purchasing power if you run into those waters. So Japan it's a real, I think, just a case study in how this stuff can get out of control very, very quickly. And obviously something that we don't want to get into. And that's, I think, why President Trump is so focused on being able to grow the American economy through that domestic growth rather than just government spending and largesse.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely correct on that. And I'll add even more. What the Democrats were upset about in this bill was not tax policy. Because let's be very clear. The Democrats had an opportunity to unwind Donald Trump's tax policy. Nancy Pelosi was Speaker, Chuck Schumer was Senate leader, and Joe Biden was in the White House. They could have undone all of Donald Trump's tax policy. The reason why they didn't is because it's the best tax policy we've ever had. So they kept it in place. So let's move off of that, because now that's settled. Donald Trump's tax policy is the best tax policy the country's ever had. Now, when it comes to Medicaid and when it comes to SNAP, the Democrats were furious because we did this thing called work requirements. And here are the work requirements. It's 20 hours a week. 20 hours a week to either work, find a job, volunteer, or go to school. 20 hours a week, 80 hours a month. And so the Democrats were furious just by putting that in the bill. They were saying this is going to have people lose their health care and all this other stuff. But when you explain the details to the American people, they go, wait a minute, having to go find work 20 hours a week if you're an able-bodied adult, that's not just common sense. Like, it should be 30 hours a week, quite frankly, if you really explain this stuff to the American people. The other thing that we did were eligibility checks. Most states have an error rate north of 10% in food stamps and in Medicaid, meaning there are people who are on these programs who are not eligible to be on these programs, but they're still on the programs anyway. So all we said was, well, let's make sure we have more rapid eligibility checks. You would have swore we were cutting people's arms off by doing that. No, all we're saying is if you are qualified and you are eligible to be on this program, you just have to verify that you're eligible to be on the program. And if you don't meet the eligibility, then you can't stay on.
Congressman, we got to run. I know you got a hard out. Thanks so much for being here. Where can people follow you?
Everything's at Byron Donalds. Go to my website, X, Facebook, Instagram, at Byron Donalds.
Go follow Byron Donalds. See you this weekend at Turning Point SAS.
Terrence Bates here with your Real America's Voice news break. Texas officials are out with an update on the still developing situation in the Lone Star State following this weekend's deadly flooding. The death toll continues to rise and has now reached more than 100 people. First responders are still working and holding out hope of finding survivors.
As of 8 a.m. Central Time, 87 deceased have been recovered in Kirk County, including 56 adults and 30 children. Identification is pending for 19 adults and 7 children, with 1 additional person still unidentified. At present, 5 Camp Mystic campers and 1 counselor still remain unaccounted for. We ask private boats to stay off the Guadalupe River to allow search and rescue teams to operate without any interference.
Meantime, President Trump just wrapping up a cabinet meeting, about an hour ago. Even before that meeting, however, the Secretaries of Agriculture, Defense, Homeland Security, and the Attorney General coming together to roll out a 7-pronged plan to protect America's farmlands and food sources.
American agriculture is not just about feeding our families, but about protecting our nation and standing up to foreign adversaries who are buying our farmland, stealing our research, and creating dangerous vulnerabilities in the very systems that sustain us. Reshoring and nearshoring our food and agriculture supply chain is essential for our nation's security. In coordination with the White House, the Departments of Treasury, Defense, Homeland Security, and Justice, as well as state governors, state agriculture commissioners, local, tribal, and territorial governments, today we announced the USDA's National Farm Security Action Plan.
That plan includes securing and protecting American farmland ownership. That means limiting and vetting who owns farmland around the country, especially near military bases and other critical infrastructure. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'm Terrence Bates. Now back to Human Events Daily with Jack Posobiec.
And Jack, where's Jack? Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. You know, we have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys that be getting Pulitzers.
Okay. In a world this summer. Okay, ready? On August 16th, you're invited to be a part of a national movement to revive our culture, to reawaken the heart of our nation, and to strengthen the conviction of our children. It's called See You at the Library. It's a nationwide day when hundreds of thousands of families gather at local libraries, read stories that reflect timeless values, and pray for our children and our country. At a time when truth is being challenged and families feel under pressure, this is a chance to stand together. Invite your neighbors, rally your church. Let's show up boldly in our biggest numbers yet. Find out how to get involved, and I'll see you at the library.
All right, Jack Posobiec, we're back. Human Events Daily, Washington, D.C., and that was an incredible announcement from our friends over at Brave Books, and we've got the person who made that announcement. Kirk Cameron joins us right now. Kirk, how are you?
Oh, so what's up, brother? Great to see you.
What's going on, man?
Hey, man, we are so excited. By the way, I love that intro with Trump. Where's Jack? Jack, where are you? Jack, it's like, where's Waldo? There he is. I see him.
There he is.
Hey, I want to see you at the library. We are coming back. We're gaining momentum. This is getting bigger and bigger. It's a national event where tens of thousands of children, together with their parents and grandparents, are meeting in the public square at public libraries. And we are taking back culture. And we're going to be doing it through prayer time, singing patriotic songs, and story time. Last year, we had 360 story hours. This year, we're hoping for 500 story hours and 50,000 people across all 50 states. It's awesome because it's grassroots. It's not paid for by rich guys or politicians. It's we the people. And we are not about a protest. We are about a movement of faith and character. And that's how we rebuild America.
Well, this is so huge, and I understand. Obviously, we did it last year. It was so incredibly popular. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but when you and I did that one last year, and we had Pastor John Amachuco there, and we had just such a huge crowd down in Northern Virginia that that was actually the very first event. So when I got up to do my brave book, The Island of Free Ice Cream, that was my son who came up and read the book with me. That was the first event that he ever spoke at publicly, outside of like the family, in his entire life. And it just goes to show you the power of brave books, the power of reading, and by the way, the power of reading in public in an event like this, because I could see how it inspired him to want to share that with the rest of the world. And he was able to do so without any fear of public speaking or anything. That was the first time, and you were right there to see it.
That was so cool to watch that. And what I love about this, Jags, is turning out to be something so much bigger than just reading books. I mean, I'm not sure the last time that many parents took their kids to a library to read books to them, but it's bigger than that. It's actually an opportunity to win back the culture as people who love God, prioritize family, and are grateful for this country. And the other side is advancing their values every single day. So if we don't stand up and fight for our values now, we won't have the freedom to live for them later, right? It's like Reagan said, if we ever forget that we're one nation under God, we'll be a nation gone under. And so we must take advantage of opportunities like this to teach our children this and get them to love the things that God loves and hate the things that he hates.
It's so simple. And by the way, the left already understands this intrinsically. This is why, and you and I have talked about this before in previous years when we've done the See at the Library event, where every library you go to, almost every library, it doesn't even matter how small your town is in some cases. Because wherever your local communist is, I always joke about this, wherever your local Marxist is, they target your library. Why? Because they understand that libraries are nodes of information, so they're nodes of influence. And when you walk in, what's the first thing you see? You see that table. And everybody knows what table I'm talking about. And you've got Ibram X. Kendi, and you've got wokeness and DEI and CRT and all this complete nonsense and gendered stuff that has nothing to do with just the basics of reading, the basics of learning. But what is it? But what are they doing? It's an operation, a cultural, psychological operation where they are going to children when they're very young, when they're impressionable, and they're saying, we want you to have our culture. We want you to think this about these topics, and we are directly going in to program your children. And guess what? If you're just dropping your kids off and saying, hey, have fun at the library, well, that's the first table they're going to see, and maybe they're going to pick up one of those. And they're doing it over and over and over. So that's why I've always commended Brave Books and your work and tried to be as supportive as I possibly can. And I strongly encourage everyone to get involved with this, because you do need to take back the culture through libraries. And it's local. And guess what? There's one in every community.
That's right. And just go to seeyouatthelibrary.com and you can find the story hour that's going to take place near you. Be part of See You at the Library with tens of thousands of people all across the country. It's going to hit the news. Jack, I'm sure, is going to be talking all about it because he's going to be there. Go to seeyouatthelibrary.com, find a local library near you that's participating, or sign your library up for it. And we'll show you how to do all of it. There's the map on your screen right now, and it's just spreading and it's growing. Remember, somebody is going to capture the future for your children. And I believe it's those who lean in and do the hard work of reading stories to them when they're little. So if you and I show up and we stand with truth, love, and conviction, we can and will reshape the narrative.
It's so important, and I was floored, by the way, last year, and we saw the big one that we were doing, but then I took a minute to look at the map and I said, oh my gosh, because even as we were driving from where we live to where this event was, we must have drove past almost a dozen of them just in, and the area we're at, we live in the DC area, so not exactly a conservative bastion, but there are pockets of conservatives, of Christians, and just people who love America, which, by the way, isn't political at all, even though they've tried to make it political, where people are saying we want to do this and we absolutely want to be there. And guess what? If our tax dollars are going to fund those libraries, then we ought to have just as much say as what goes into them as they do. And I'm looking at the numbers here. So the goal is 500 story hours by August 16th. So August 16th, screw that down, write it down right now. And currently there's 100 events in 37 states. I want to see 50 out of 50. We've 13 more states. So if you're in, go look at the map right now. And if your state's not covered, guess what? You just became the captain for your state.
That's right. If you are sick and tired of all the negativity and you say, like, when's our team going to get off the defense, get on the offense and start putting some points on the board? Here's an opportunity for you to be one of those heroes and one of those legends that our children will take lessons from. Show up on August 16th. It's easy and it's effective. Be a part of what we're doing all the way across the nation. And sing songs, pray, and read stories on August 16th. Go to seeyouatthelibrary.com to find out how.
That's absolutely perfect. By the way, Kirk, I have to also commend you because we were joking a little bit in the break, but prior to coming on, I was saying that, it feels like I see you all the time because we've always got you on in the house because my kids can't stop watching the adventures of Iggy and Mr. Kirk. And it's been kind of rainy weather lately. So I give them a little more lenient on the TV time when I can't, throw them outside. And my kids love it. They absolutely love it. And they love the stories. They love Iggy. And it was funny because I remember that they've had the opportunity to meet you a couple times, but I don't think they've quite put together that you're the same guy that they see in the TV. So I'm like, no, that's really him.
I know. I know the feeling. I remember the first time I met Henry Winkler, who played the Fonz in Happy Days. Wow. I lost my mind. He was my hero growing up. I didn't understand why he didn't have a leather jacket and wasn't riding a motorcycle. He could snap his fingers and two pretty girls would come over and dance with him anywhere he was. And that doesn't happen. So
that part
when kids see me now, they're wondering where Iggy is. They don't really care about Mr. Kirk. They want to know where Iggy is.
Yeah, exactly. They say, wait, where's Iggy? Shouldn't he just pop out of your pocket?
That's right. You'd think that he would. And I got to be honest with you. It's hard for me to believe that he's not real. And I hope no kids are listening to this, but that puppeteer brings him to life like you can't believe. Expressions on his lifeless face. Just look at him right there. He's so adorable and endearing. Kids absolutely fall in love with him. And I'm really happy that parents are letting their kids watch the show.
Now, what kind of response are you seeing? And tell people, by the way, if they want to get access to the show, how they can see it.
Yeah, the response has been tremendous. It's a runaway hit. You can see this several different ways. If you're a part of the Brave Books Book of the Month Club, you get free access to it. You're going to be able to see it at Angel Studio app right next to The Chosen. You're going to be able to see this at PureFlix if you have a subscription there. And you can go to their own streaming platform, Brave Plus, on your smart TV or your mobile device, Brave Plus. So it's easy to see. First few episodes are absolutely free. And then if you sign up with a subscription to any of the things I just told you about, then you get all of the seasons for free. And we've done 10 episodes in the first season. We've got the second season already locked and ready to go. And we're talking about a third season.
Well, that's just absolutely incredible. And I love watching it with, we do have Brave Plus. And what's great about Brave Plus is that people think, oh, it's just this. No, it's not just this. And we've Chef Gruel is on there, and he's been on the program as well, talking about this with us. It's just a cool show. My wife loves watching that, seeing it and seeing how, you can make healthy stuff for your family without having to break the bank or without having to go to some exotic, food suppliers or anything, just normal stuff that you can find around. But, just make different choices when you're going around the shelves. And what I also love about Brave Plus is when you do it, we do it through the subscription model. So we get the book every month, which is great. My kids are always waiting for the next one. It comes in, so they check the mailbox like you wouldn't believe because they're always waiting for the next book. And I
do too. I get them coming to my house as well.
Yeah, they can tell when they've gone a while because they know that, hey, something's late, and then I gotta get on the phone, and I'm like, Trent, what's going on, man? What's going on?
But that's right. They know the packaging because it's so unique with the characters all drawn.
I'm just telling you.
And there's a new book every month. I love how Brave Books pumps out these pro-God, pro-America books every single month, and then of course those books get read to Iggy in the middle of the episode of Iggy and Mr. Kirk, so the kids are like, they're immersed in this whole universe of values.
We got to run. We got a break coming up. But Kirk, thanks so much for stopping by. And hey, I'll see you at the library.
Okay, bro. See you there.
Rock and roll. Back, folks. Jack Posobiec.
They said Gen Z would stay silent, that we'd back down, that we'd forget what's worth fighting for. But this generation remembers. We remember truth. We remember freedom. And now, we rise. This is more than a conference. It's a call to action, to reclaim the future, to ignite a movement that cannot be ignored. Student Action Summit 2025, featuring the boldest voices in the fight.
Charlie Kirk, Secretary Pete Hegseth, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Brett Cooper, Secretary Kristi Noem, Riley Gaines, Brandon Tatum, Jack Posobiec, Laura Ingraham, Megyn Kelly, Greg Gutfeld, Tom Homan, Congressman Byron Donalds, Russell Brand, Savannah Chrisley. Join thousands of students, future leaders, and freedom fighters. This is the battleground of ideas.
This is the Student Action Summit. Register now at sas2025.com.
When I'm working long hours, I'm always listening to Human Events with Jack Posobiec.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live here, Human Events Daily. Now, I know that earlier on the program, I had to express my extreme displeasure with Attorney General Bondi's comments and really her attitude in attacking anyone who asks questions about Epstein. These people aren't asking questions for no reason. They're asking questions because you told them that you had the answers. No one forced you to say all of these things. You did. And you went on TV night after night after night. You invited people into the White House and acted like you had troves upon troves of information. You personally handed me a binder that said phase 1 of the Epstein files, as in there's going to be 2, 3, 4, and however many more. Now you're saying there's nothing. So don't sit there and say it's case closed when your own actions are what led to this point. Simple as that. You said this is worse than Hillary. This is worse than Hillary on Benghazi. However, I do need to talk about something very important that happened over the evening after the show ended yesterday and breaking earlier this morning, that the Department of Justice, which I completely support, by the way, completely support in terms of this, filed a criminal complaint against 10 people, an individualized Antifa cell that planned out an ambush at an ICE detention center in Texas on the 4th of July. Of course, each individual of this cell has been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder of a federal officer and 3 counts of discharging a firearm during and in relation. So at approximately 10:30 p.m., I'll just read from it. Approximately 10:37 p.m., a group of 10 to 12 people wearing all black allegedly shot up fireworks towards the center, vandalized vehicles, the facility itself, which included spray painting ICE pig on a car. And by the way, we're showing the mugshots right now. Just look at this. Look at this group. An absolute collection of mongrels. Just look at all these mongrels up there. And I tell people again and again, I wrote the entire book about Unhumans, the secret history of communist revolutions and how to crush them. And I said, this is all based in envy. It's all based in envy. People who are bitter at their lot in life, people who are bitter, who don't like the fact that they were born, who hate themselves, who hate life, who hate God, and then decide that they have to turn back against it. And by the way, there's 2 ways, okay? There's 2 ways to respond to, envy or those types of feelings, to say, I want something better for my life. There's 2 ways to respond to that. One way can be motivating, to say, hey, I was born working class, but you know what? I can see people have a better life and I'm going to work hard so I can move my way up. All right. That's the first way, motivation. The second way is look at those people, those smug Richie Riches. I'm going to tear them down. I'm going to tear down them and the society that created them. This is how you create communists. So you can be an American or you can be a communist, but you can't be both. All right. The American dream is inaccessible to communists because communism is a nightmare, but it's also a tactic. And what are the tactics? We always see them here. Attacking ICE, attacking federal agents, trying to go after them, this motley crew of mongrels, just so disgusting. Just you look at them and they're like these twisted, deformed creatures. It's unbelievable when you really look at it, and you can see the hatred and resentment just oozing out of the pores of their faces. That when this is done, and this is Alvarado, Texas, and this isn't going to stop. Defendants were dressed in black military-style clothing, on foot. Additional firearms, magazines containing ammunition, radios, 12 sets of body armor were found in a search of vehicles, 2 AR-15-style rifles, ballistic vests, a helmet in the car. Look, folks, if you don't understand by now that the domestic terrorists, the street assassins, and all the rest are being activated, then you haven't been paying attention. The rise of the unhumans is here because Democrats and the left have completely lost at the ballot box. They're losing in poll after poll. They've lost political power. So what are they turning? They're turning to feral power. They're turning to street power, because that is the way they think that they can shake down the system, and done it again and again. Luigi Maggioni and Zohran Mamdani, Kami Mamdani, are in the same city. You think that's an accident? No, it's not. It's a playbook. It's a textbook, and I've written it. It's called Unhumans. You can go to unhumansbook.com and go check it out for yourself. It came out exactly 1 year ago. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to play a short.
Now is the moment to put your brand in front of an engaged, loyal audience through Real America's Voice. When you advertise on Real America's Voice, you're not just running an ad. This is America's Voice Live.
And welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gurley.
The pulse of the people.
We need somebody that's going to hear the people's voice.
The truth the mainstream won't touch.
This guy is, by definition, a globalist.
And the stories that matter.
Rav's own Ben Bergquam.
Right up over this hill, we got armed cartel. I see him.
Live.
Breaking news right now here on Real America's Voice.
Unfiltered.
These people are domestic terrorists.
And unapologetic.
We're here to take a stand for God and country. Does feel good, doesn't it?
America's Voice Live starts now.
Welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gurry. It is Tuesday, the 8th of July. Let's get to the day's top stories. As always, thank you for joining us here today on Real America's Voice. Now, over the last few days, there have been two separate attacks on two different ICE detention facilities in Texas. These attacks have left multiple casualties, including a police officer and one of the suspects. I'll be discussing that in detail coming up. Also, President Trump recently delayed the start of his America First tariffs from July 9th to August 1st in order to secure some more trade deals from other nations, including the latest from Vietnam. I'll be discussing how the markets are reacting with an economic expert. That's coming up today as well. And then later, I'll discuss the aftermath in Israel following the Iran strikes in early June, as well as some on-the-ground coverage from Real America's Voice correspondent Oscar Ramirez. He's right there on the front lines. All the details and updates coming your way today. But first, I want to start here. A lot happening over the last few days. As you know, we were able to clear one major hurdle by getting the One Big Beautiful Bill passed and then signed into law on the 4th of July. However, that Republican victory is bittersweet when considering the devastation in central Texas because of flooding from the Guadalupe River. The death toll has now surpassed 100. The last count, 108 or more casualties across 6 counties, with dozens of individuals still missing. Officials in the hard-hit Kirk County have reported 84 deaths in total, with 56 being adults and the other 28 being kids. Quite the tragedy, and our hearts and prayers go out to the families who have lost loved ones in this terrible event. The Democrats, in their usual fashion, however, have been quick to politicize the devastating flooding in Texas by blaming President Trump, climate change, race relations, and government cuts. Now, on Monday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt shut down these claims made by Chuck Schumer and members of the mainstream media. Here's what he said.
Unfortunately, in the wake of this once-in-a-generation natural disaster, we have seen many falsehoods pushed by Democrats such as Senator Chuck Schumer and some members of the media. Blaming President Trump for these floods is a depraved lie, and it serves no purpose during this time of national mourning. Here are the facts. In the lead up to this tragic natural disaster, the National Weather Service did its job. Despite unprecedented rainfall, the National Weather Service executed timely and precise forecasts and warnings.
President Trump himself addressing Chuck Schumer for the earlier today. Here's what he said during the cabinet meeting. Listen.
His name is Schumer. He's a great Palestinian. No, he's a Palestinian. He's become a Palestinian. He's abandoned the Jews. But I saw him say, it's Trump's fault. Yeah, that's right. It's Trump's fault. He was actually, do you ever see John Lovett's The Liar? Where he goes, yeah, I went to Harvard. That's right. This was Schumer. He goes, yeah, it's Trump's fault. That's right, it's Trump. I actually saw that stupid guy try and blame it on me, and I said, man, that's a tough one to take. But his career is limited because I hear AOC is going to beat him, and she's no bargain either, by the way.
Here with me now to discuss this, my friend and Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee. Congressman, nice to see you here today. A lot to cover, obviously. Let's start with those Texas floods. Devastating. Tennessee, no stranger to big floods like this and big events of natural disaster. You understand that. And I wouldn't blame Joe Biden for the rain. I wouldn't blame Donald Trump for the rain. I wouldn't blame Doge for the rain. It's ridiculous how much finger pointing goes on. Something I wouldn't do. I would blame bad policies and bad reaction more than anything. Bad reaction to the aftermath of an event. Sir, thank you for being here. What do you make of these people just pointing fingers at anyone and everyone, especially the president?
100% blaming Trump for this is the most ridiculous thing. You know, after Hurricane Helene, Joe Biden's administration was the most pitiful response time. And if you remember, after Trump got in, those poor people up in North Carolina, Trump made the Army Corps of Engineers go back up there, and they finally got things working up there again. But yeah, blaming this on Trump is the most pathetic thing that you can imagine. Schumer's grabbing at straws. I saw an editorial this weekend that the Democrats, and this is a left-wing publication, was saying they better jump. They better abandon Schumer. He is a lost cause, and he's hurting the party. And AOC probably is the future of the Democratic Party, which tells you they're Marxists. I mean, Cortez, she's my buddy, but she's a Marxist. She's a friendly Marxist, but she's still a Marxist. And that is the future of the Democratic Party. That's why Republican numbers are swelling among Hispanics and black folks and others. And labor especially is moving towards us. And the reason is because that party is abandoned. And that is the party of men and women's sports and all this nonsense all over the world, and not taking care of our border and taking care of our own people.
Do you think, I mean, to be fair, Congressman, Marxists are always smiling to begin with because they want to lure you into the trap of socialism, Marxism, communism, and all of that. This idea, though, that this was dismissed early on, but the Democrats tried to say, well, the National Weather Service had been defunded by Doge and by Donald Trump, and there weren't enough people on staff. The fact of the matter is there were enough people on staff. The early warnings went out. It may have been fumbled at the local level, but at the end of the day, look, this is Texas Hill Country. The Guadalupe River floods a lot, and sometimes more dramatically than it did over the weekend. There just weren't people in the way. This time it was a tragedy because it was the 4th of July weekend. Circumstances, well, they piled on each other, and as a result, we've had this terrible loss. Let's just be honest. Nature happens, doesn't it?
It does. I've talked to and texted between Chip Roy, August Pfluger, and Roger Williams. They're all congressmen down in Texas. And one of them reminded me that I think 20 years ago they had a similar situation, and several people lost their lives in that too. You got a dry area that has a little bit of rain. That's why they tell you if you ever go to the desert, never park your camper in a gully somewhere, because if at one chance out of 1,000 you get a rainstorm, you get a quarter inch of rain. Just go out, and sometimes when you just get a little sprinkle and go and look at the bottom of your gutters, the water running out into your yard, and just see how that multiplies so fast. Imagine that over a huge amount of terrain. It's a force of nature, and there's no way you're going to tame it. And unfortunately, a bunch of little girls and people lost their lives, and a bunch of people tried to capitalize on it politically. And I hope they get all the wrath they're due.
I agree with that. There is a question I would like to ask. So it's been the conversation on social media. People have asked the question. I'm asking the question as well. Weather manipulation, cloud seeding specifically. Cloud seeding has been a regular practice in Texas for decades. Some people claiming maybe there was cloud seeding going on leading up to this rainfall, 15 inches in a short period of time, tremendous amount of water. One of your other colleagues, Marjorie Taylor Greene, discussing the idea of making weather manipulation a felony. What do you say to that?
I signed on to the bill because I think that needs to be dealt with. We've got to have, and that's the way you do it, is to have a hearing. Washington, before myself and Marjorie Taylor Greene, the general way to do it is you write a strong letter, and then you go home and tell everybody, look at this letter I write. It's almost Chamberlain-esque. We have peace in our time, and Marjorie and I talked about this. I was working on a bill, our legal folks, it takes forever, and she was too. Hers came out. I called her and said, I want to sign on because we'll have a tough hearing and we'll hear what's going on. People are saying we're conspiracy theorists, but you don't patent a conspiracy. And these things have been patented, they've been proven they do it. There's Sean Ryan has a podcast out, just oddly enough, this past couple of weeks. A fellow's talking about how they've proven that it works, because they will, if you just see the cloud, you just don't really know. You can't prove it. But if you zigzag or create a shape or write your name or say Voice of America across of it, and the rain comes down out of that, then you can prove it's happened. And they've proven it works in some cases. So it's a real thing. Weather manipulation is real, but in the hands of our enemies or some overlord, I think it could be a very detrimental thing. And I'm big on God and just letting him work his magic, not people trying to play God.
Let me ask you something about people trying to play God while you're at it. The Chinese have been caught a number of times recently trying to bring in a pathogen in the United States, like fungus and so forth. I heard the Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins here earlier saying, time to chop off the ability of China to buy farmland in America. She made those comments during the cabinet meeting today. Sir, what are your thoughts?
100%. They're buying. Here's how bad it's gotten. They own commissaries in our military installations. They buy property near our military installations. They're buying vast acreage of cropland. And the way they do it is, and I'm not the attorney here, but they do it through corporations. And so you have to pierce the veil of that corporation. And there might be some unknowing Americans having it, but 51% of that dadgum corporation is Chinese owned or by Chinese. And they're obviously probably members of the Chinese Communist Party. And it's a nefarious thing. They're gonna regulate a commodity, which is food, which I don't know about you, but we all need it. And then it puts us under a, that's the trick. You buy it up, you sell it cheaper than everybody else, you put everybody out of business, and you buy more of it. Yeah. And it's the oldest trick in the book. It's against the law in America. It's they're trust busters and everything else that falls on the books. But they found a way around it, and we do need to stop it. We need to stop it now, and America needs to wake up. Listen, these lobbyists are in bed with these Chinese corporations. I have a bill to stop the genetic testing from them. They buy the genetic testing from these places. You send them a swab and you find out your ancestors are kings or something. Most of my ancestors are probably horse thieves, but they never seem to find anybody that's a horse thief. They're all kings. And the Chinese are buying it up. And the reason they're buying it up, create a genome. They want to create a genome.
That's right.
And we've been proven that they're trying to create a bug or a virus that affects American women of childbearing ages. Now, imagine that could send a chilling effect through this country pretty quick. So we've got to wake up. They're not our friends. We got to quit looking at every shiny object on across the street. We got to start focusing on taking care of America. And this is one of the ways we'll do it.
By targeting croplands with bioterror from agriculture to the people. All right, let's move on. We've got a little bit of time left here, Congressman. The Department of Justice says no evidence of Jeffrey Epstein's client list and that he did, in fact, commit suicide. Boy, has this churned up the folks in MAGA world, I suppose. They're not buying it. I'm not sure I'm buying it. What do you make of it?
No, man, that's. I think it's bogus, but I think it's the cards they were dealt. I don't think any evidence exists anymore. I think the Biden administration was crooked as a dog's leg. I think they destroyed this evidence. That's my opinion. I'm still allowed to have that as an American citizen, and I think they destroyed any evidence that existed. And now, and I think the Attorney General needs to quit talking unless she has evidence, because she's already embarrassed enough with this thing. And I believe it's a real problem. I think it causes Kash Patel and the rest of the guys at the FBI a real black eye. And I don't believe it's their own fault. I believe it's the evidence that they have. And I think it's been altered, and any proof has been destroyed. You saw it when they busted his apartment up there in New York. They carried out boxes of stuff, and you're telling me nothing's on there? The Gazelle, whatever her name is, she goes to jail. But where are the clients that she went to jail for supplying these prostitutes or child whatever? I didn't want to think about it. But again, why is she in jail? Why are the people? And I suspect she's hopefully she's got a food taster on everything she eats, because I'd say she's the hottest commodity there is.
Yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell sitting in prison, for supplying what clients. There has to be a list. You would think, except that you make a great point, Congressman, unless all of that was purged during the previous administration. I appreciate you being here. We continue to watch what's happening in Texas, and I appreciate you taking the time and answering a variety of questions today, Congressman. Thank you.
Pray for them. Pray for those folks in Texas, brother. They need our prayers more than anything.
Amen. Tim Burchett, everybody, Congressman from Tennessee. They've seen their share of bad breaks when it comes to weather as well. All right, coming up after the break. Over the last few days, there have been two separate attacks on two different ICE detention facilities in Texas, both deliberate. These attacks leaving multiple casualties, including a suspect and a police officer. Details coming up on ABL. U.S. ICE agents and other federal law enforcement officers conducting immigration enforcement, doing their jobs, have been targeted in at least 2 ambushes in Texas in the last few days. On Monday, the Justice Department named 10 individuals charged with shooting a police officer in the neck and then opened fire on other correctional officers outside the Prairieland Detention Center in Alvarado, Texas. That happened on the 4th of July. The group allegedly first began shooting fireworks at the facility, which the Department of Homeland Security is using to hold people related to immigration violations or awaiting deportation. Not only that, but another attack occurred. An armed 27-year-old man by the name of Ryan Luis Mosqueda fired dozens of rounds from an assault rifle at federal agents in the U.S. Border Patrol facility in McAllen, Texas, a place I was here just a few weeks back. Not long ago, I was in McAllen, Texas, at this very spot. By the way, the suspect, not too far from me either, he came from Michigan, apparently traveled all the way to the border to make this assault. Why? Here with me to discuss these attacks is the CEO of Law Enforcement Against Drugs and Violence and a former police officer himself, Nick DeMauro. Nick, nice to have you back on the program.
Steve, thank you for having me. It's always an honor.
I appreciate it. Look, these are targeted attacks. These, I think, ambush is the right word. You've got a guy here, this 27-year-old guy from Muskegon, Michigan, travels all the way to McAllen, Texas, to try to kill Border Patrol agents, ICE agents. I cannot help but believe, Nick, that the rhetoric, the smear jobs on these law enforcement officers that are enforcing the border, Customs and Border Patrol, ICE agents, all these people being targeted by all these smear jobs in the mainstream media and by our friends on the left side of the aisle, it plays into this, Nick. These people are being ginned up, and then these assaults and these attacks happen, and people are going to get killed because, as we've been told, this will not be the end of it, will it?
No, it won't. And unfortunately, the media is perpetuating this type of situation, and it's really unnecessary. The bottom line is illegal immigrants who are here causing problems, who are dangerous, who are murderers, who are drug dealers, they should not be in our country. They came in illegally, and they should be removed. It's that simple. The due process has already happened. You know, I get that comment presented to me all the time. Well, we got to give these people due process. They had their due process. We know they're a convicted murderer. They've had their due process. Go back to where they came from. And that's the problem. And we can't allow this to happen. We have to keep our country safe.
Yeah, this red-hot rhetoric coming from the left and the mainstream media, Chicken Noodle News, MSNBC, several Democrat members of Congress and senators, all ratcheting up the comments being made here. And people like Tom Homan said, look, you're going to see more of these attacks. Tom Homan said you're going to see more because this is the temperature that has been turned up to. So, Nick, I say to these ICE agents, thank you for what you're doing. Keep your head on a swivel because you never know what's going to happen next. Not from the illegals that they're trying to take out or from the people coming from the other side of them. I mean, what a dangerous place to be.
Yeah, my hat's off to them. You know, I have a friend of mine who was a major Navy SEAL trainer. He was a captain in the Navy SEALs, and he was saying one of the first things they teach the Navy SEALs is to know your surroundings, know completely around where you are, what's in front of you, what's on your right side, what's on your left side, what's in your back side. And that's an important thing to understand these ICE agents. They're a target. It's unfortunate because they're there to keep us safe, but we need to look at these ICE agents as heroes, not as adversaries.
I completely agree with you. Look, Nick, the country voted overwhelmingly to secure the border. The president and his administration, Donald Trump and his team, have been able to do that. Border crossings have been cut to just about zero. And in fact, no illegals were released into the country in the month of May. I've not seen numbers for June, but in the month of May, that number was zero, down from 62,000 in May of 2024. So, I mean, these are remarkable achievements. And now we've got to have our own police officers, law enforcement. Who would ever have imagined when you were a kid, Nick, or when I was a kid, that the Democrats would be saying these are terrible people, which basically are ginning up this hatred. And listen, it's triggering these attacks in large part, I believe, and it's got to stop, doesn't it?
Steve, what bothers me are the average Democrat good people. I am actually an elected official in a small town in New Jersey, and I'm a registered Democrat. Okay. And the centrist, what I call the centrist or moderate Democrat, are good people. There's a few away to the left that are causing this issue. And that's what really needs, and that's the sad part about this, because the people, the moderate centrist Democrats in the middle who are good people should be trying to wheel them in. And with all due respect, people way to the right, need to come more to the center. We have to get this country back into the right fold here.
Eliminate the fringe. Talk to your neighbors. And don't shoot police officers. It's a pretty simple series of ideas, Nick.
Yeah,
I think I'm probably with you on all of that.
Think about it. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, independent. I don't care what you are. How can you justify shooting a police officer?
You can't.
Period.
I mean, you just simply can't. I mean, they're doing their job. They're doing the job they were asked to do, they were hired to do, which is enforce the law, protect this country. Nick DeMora, I'm going to leave it right there, but I appreciate you being here, sir. We'll keep an eye on it because, sadly, I think that Tom Homan's right. I think that you're right. It's not the last of these that we're going to see. Now, coming up after the break, President Trump recently delayed the start of his America First tariffs to August 1st in order to secure more trade deals like the one he put together just in the last couple of days with Vietnam. I'll discuss how the markets are reacting next on ABL. President Trump's second term in office, he announced his America First trade agenda by issuing tariff rates on dozens of countries before unveiling a 90-day negotiating period. Seems to have worked some. That period was set to end on Wednesday, but President Trump signed an executive order to delay the official tariff increase until August 1st in order to secure more trade negotiations and deals. U.S. stocks wobbled a bit today as Wall Street weighed President Trump's tariffs delay. The S&P 500 hovering nearly the flat line. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down just a little bit, but not too bad. And the NASDAQ Composite edged, half a point up. And it's still not done with the trading day. Here with me now to discuss this is tax attorney and chairman of Americans for Fair Trade, Steve Hayes. Steve, nice to see you again.
I'm delighted to be back with you, Steve, as always. Thank you.
Yeah, let me check some temperatures around the financial neighborhood. Oil's at $68 to $70. It's back up again. It came down after those attacks on Iran, but it's edged up $3 or $4. The Dow is at 44,200, pretty decent still. Let's see. We just made a deal with Vietnam. Gas prices went down again today. They're about where they were a month ago and 50 cents less than they were a year ago. The indications from the economy overall are pretty decent as far as the average consumer goes. The high interest and the high inflation rates are gone. It would be nice if the Fed would bring down interest rates, that's for sure. But just take a scan across the financial plateau and tell me what you're seeing.
Well, what I'm seeing is a lot of the unrest, honestly, was what was going to be ultimately in the big, beautiful bill. And not just the trade, not just the tariffs, but it was actually what was going to make the cut. And ironically, the Senate passed bill, which many people thought was going to go into reconciliation with the House, was passed as it was, even though it changed a lot of the things that were red lines supposedly in the House, where they wouldn't even consider, for example, salt. And so now you've got some predictability that's going to feed into a lot of people's confidence in going forward, because you're not going to get, not likely, you're going to get Trump to go back on his word in the next 3 years. You may have a different Congress, but those rates and those decisions are going to be in place for 3 years. That's number one. Number two, a lot of people say, oh my gosh, a 25% tariff, let's just say on Samsung products. That means that Samsung phone I was going to buy is going to cost 25% more. Frankly, even where the tariffs have gone into place, most of those increases have been absorbed by the companies selling the products. Not only Samsung, but also the retail outlets have reduced much of that increase. So that's all being worked into how investors look at this, but primarily how business looks at this. Because you had a lot of people refusing to hire anyone until they saw what was going to happen with the bill. Were they going to have the same benefits they've had to date? Because if they didn't, a lot of businesses' costs were going to go up 15 to 25% in December, and that was going to really mitigate against them spending money on expansion. So I think what we're really seeing now is more of the businesses adjusting to what the new reality is.
And here's part of the new reality, and I want to make sure people understand this. If you're a business or you're an individual, tax rates they're there. The tax rates are permanent. That's good news, Steve. One of the things that was put in there that was popular and has gone away and now has been re-implemented, that is writing off capital investment, 100% first year. That is a big deal for businesses that want to get, a big piece of equipment, want to bring in new computers, want to do whatever they need to do. Maybe they need a fleet of vehicles because they run vehicles. Capital investment, to write it off 100% in the first year, that should really get the economy pumping for some industries and some businesses, shouldn't it?
Absolutely, it will. And again, a lot of people were holding off. This is not just my opinion. It's been confirmed by many different surveys of small businesses primarily. They were holding off because that is a critical factor in whether they can afford to buy a piece of equipment, whether or not they can write it off in the first year. If they have to amortize it, then it's going to make it more expensive by amortizing, write it off over the next, say, 5 years. Much more expensive, and they can't really justify it. So it's been a huge thing. I think you're going to see a lot of businesses making more capital investment. We all know that more investment will lead to more productivity. More productivity will lead to a growth in jobs. And you've also got the effect of the tariffs, the fact that he's threatening to make these companies, and these countries really, and the companies that are in them, be treated the same way as our companies are treated in their country, is that you're seeing a lot of companies rushing to open up plants over here because they no longer are going to get the benefit that they have had and they would have had under other presidents of getting it both ways. They're getting a write-off on their exports, and they were paying nothing.
Let me ask you one more thing. One more thing, and I've only got a moment here, but I want you to weigh in on one thing that Donald Trump has been saying. That is, for example, put farm workers under the direct control of the farmer. You're in charge of these folks. If this guy's been in the country, maybe he's been here illegally 15, 20 years, but you know him, you know his family. He works on your farm. He's not one of these criminals. He's not one of these gangbangers. A way for some of these people to have a pathway, not to citizenship, but to be here to work legally. Real quickly, a good idea or a bad idea?
I think it's a great idea, and it's what was being done all across the Southwest and, frankly, a lot of states 50 years ago. People would regularly come over here. They'd work 3 or 4 months during the harvest time, and then they would go home. And basically, we're reinstating that. We're also making it, like you said, some bureaucrat in D.C. isn't going to decide if Jose is qualified to work here or not. It's going to be the person who knows him and can make that decision. And I think it's very, very smart, very practical, because the one thing you can say about this president, he's very practical in what he comes up with.
A pathway for employment, not a pathway for citizenship, but a pathway for legal employment. I think that's a conversation worthy of having. Steve Hayes, you're always a conversation worthy of having. Thank you for being here.
Steve, it's always my pleasure. Love to be here.
Thank you, sir. All right, after the break, I'll discuss the aftermath in Israel following the Iran strikes in early June that shook up the world, as well as some on the ground. We have some coverage. Real America's Voice correspondent Oscar Ramirez straight ahead here on America's Voice Live. While the conflict in Israel and Iran has quieted for the time being following the U.S. Operation Midnight Hammer, the threat of an imminent continuation of this war is still on the table, of course. Does it ever really go away? Not exactly. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with President Trump to discuss joint cooperation, how to address Iran in the future. Addressing and assessing damage and trying to rebuild from Iran's offensive is still a reality facing many citizens in Israel. Joining me now from Israel, America's Voice correspondent Oscar L. Blue Ramirez. He'll go just about anywhere as long as it's dangerous. Oscar, really appreciate you being here. Give us a feeling, a sense of the people in Israel. We're at a ceasefire, but it's always, like it could go off and change at any moment. What are you finding on the ground when you talk to the folks there?
We just arrived, Steve, good evening from Israel. We just arrived today. And just for everybody to know, the meticulous inspection I crossed from Jordan to Israel. It took me around 3 to 5 hours. Just that inspection alone, it tells you the level of protection from the Israel authorities and the meticulous inspections, how they are approaching crossing people from Jordan ultimately into Israel. And when it comes to just recent attacks in Gaza, just 5 IDF soldiers were killed still in Gaza just hours ago, and moments, days ago, also 7 IDF soldiers were also assassinated in a carrier right here in Gaza. So the people going back to normal, and right here in Jerusalem, also going back to normal in Tel Aviv, but ultimately still the things in Gaza, they're still agitated, Steve.
Yeah, and what is normal? I have to ask, Oscar, because look, at any moment the sirens could go off. The Iron Dome could be activated. We're told they're running low on some of the equipment to keep the Iron Dome functioning at full capacity. So what is normal in Israel?
Well, what I consider to be normal is people going back to their normal jobs and doing their normal lives. That is what it looks like right now. It looks, at this particular moment in juncture, it looks peaceful. We are going to go, during the week where the ballistic missiles from Iran entered and beat the Iron Dome and hit some particular places in Tel Aviv. We're going to inspection that. And also we are going to talk to the people to how they're feeling at this particular moment. We just arrived, what I feel right now to Jerusalem and to several parts of Israel. It feels calm and it feels like the people are trying to get back to their normal lives, but anything can happen. As I'm just telling you, Steve, just moments ago, 5 IDF soldiers were killed in Gaza. So the tensions are still, uprising. In whatever moment it can just trickle to difficult situations.
Yeah, 5 more soldiers killed, and this is the middle of a ceasefire with Iran, not necessarily in Gaza, as those operations continue. All right, so Oscar, you're there for a bit. You're going to be there for a couple of days. Tell the folks you're going to be traveling some, looking things over, sharing your experiences right here in Real America's Voice. Give us an idea of your itinerary, where you're going to be, who you're going to see, what you expect to find.
Where the whole, we're going to be here for at least 17 to 18 days. We're going to go to the north, ultimately to Northern Galilee, to see how that is going over there, see some spots that were critically hit by the Iranian attacks, talk to the citizens of Jerusalem and talk to the citizens of Israel, ultimately some authorities. Also, we have some interviews lined up for people to understand how this is going to project and how this is going to be moving forward. And, and be sure to be watching at every moment. This can easily, trickle to something else like it happened just a few weeks ago.
Absolutely true. Oscar, I greatly appreciate you being here as always, my friend. Be safe and make sure you keep your head down if needed. He'll be there, like you said, 17, 18 days. He'll be traveling throughout the country and giving us reports every step of the way. So, Oscar, thank you. Be careful, please.
Like always, Steve, thank you so much for the invitation.
All right. Of course. A new administration in Washington brought a lot of changes, positive, much of it, when it comes to fixing our broken healthcare system. But the reality is, there's only so much a government can do. And what if we really want to make America healthy again? Well, that starts at home with each and every one of us. You, me, all of us. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. You see and hear from TWC doctors on this program regularly. And you know that their products are the gold standard for keeping you and your family safe and healthy. The Wellness Company gives you the opportunity to make sure you are prepared for whatever happens with their series of prescription medical kits that contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of these medications. Additionally, the Wellness Company offers a variety of products from parasite cleanses to methylene blue to weight loss and, well, so much more. It can help you stay healthy and live a longer and, more importantly, a more satisfying life. Make America healthy again starts at home with you. Do your part. Protect the health of you and your family. Go to twc.health/voice today and order. That's twc.health/voice. Use the promo code VOICE. You'll save 10% on your purchases there. All right. Don't go anywhere. America's Voice Live will continue in just a moment. A short while ago, President Trump held a cabinet meeting where he took questions from the media. Our chief White House correspondent, Brian Glenn, was there, got a question in for Attorney General Pam Bondi. Here's what he asked. Here's what she said. Listen.
My two questions. It looks like we have a rogue judge, an Obama-backed rogue judge that is attempting to block the funding to Planned Parenthood, which the big, beautiful bill cuts off the funding to Planned Parenthood. Any plans to challenge that?
Okay. Absolutely. Yes, we're on it. We're on it. And I texted, I believe, I talked to yesterday Secretary Lutnick and Secretary Besson. I reached out to you to let you know that we were on it in the big, beautiful bill.
Wonderful. And then
I let her handle that question. Did you notice? I said, go ahead, handle that question.
All right, here he is, Brian Glenn, standing out there in 95-degree heat in Washington, D.C. Washington in the summer, 95 degrees, 95 humidity. Brian, I love being there, but I do not envy you today. All right, so a lot of comments. Pam Bondi getting hammered on the Epstein questions as well today. Tell me about that exchange. There are a couple of those. Donald Trump not impressed with people talking about Epstein, saying, look, why are you wasting our time? There are other bigger things to talk about. But there is a fascination with Epstein. People want to know who he was connected to. And so I think it's still fair game. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's still fair game. I know that MAGA's definitely talking about it, and they're talking about other things as well, but that is one of the things that if you go on X, it seems like every other post is asking about this question. But yeah, the reporter getting shut down essentially by President Trump for asking that question. And then Bondi's saying, well, when I said I was going to look at it, I was going to look at the overall file that was on my desk, maybe not necessarily the client list. Now, a lot of people not liking that answer on X, but nevertheless, that was her answer today. Will we ever know? I don't know. But certainly, in the eyes of the president and this administration, they've got bigger things to think about and bigger problems to solve. But X still talking about the Epstein files.
Yeah, the natives are restless. You're right. The MAGA natives are restless. They want answers on the Epstein, there's just the tawdry, awful things that happened. People know what happened. I mean, we've got witness after witness. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison. We know things happen and there are no answers. Now, the suggestion is being made that, well, maybe the previous administration cleaned out its files, if you will, took the place through, shredded whatever. I don't know what to believe anymore. I believe that Jeffrey Epstein was connected to powerful people, and he's been able to, he's gone, but the people that were around him, for the most part, have, slipped back into the ether, Brian. And you're right, people are not impressed with that.
They're not, but I think one thing we can all rest assured is if the gentleman that is the president right now, if he was anywhere near this list, being that the Biden administration had this total case in their hands, we would have already known about it. He probably would have been already sentenced to jail or sitting in jail. So we know that the president has nothing to do with this. But the bigger question is, who else is on that list that perhaps they don't want to reveal? Or who was Jeffrey Epstein tied to? Was he some type of foreign agent of some sort?
Well,
I don't know.
Question.
Obviously, I'm just speculating. Right.
Yeah. Bill Gates. There's a lot of names on that list we'd like to know. I mean, Melinda Gates made it clear one of the reasons she divorced Bill was because of her annoyance at his continued fraternization with Jeffrey Epstein. We'd like to know what that's about. I mean, honestly, these are valid questions. Something else I saw come out of there. Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins says they're going to stop allowing the Chinese to buy farmland in America. That's a big deal across Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, Ohio, across this country, because China buying up farmland in close proximity to military bases has been a concern, but there's also the ag bioterrorism angle, isn't there?
It is, and it should concern all Americans that we have the Chinese government buying up U.S. land, in particular, farmland. Now, the president said this the other day, and he says, look, if these farmers are put in a situation where they can no longer sustain their livelihood and they need to sell their land so that their family can just survive, we totally understand that. It's understandable. But they should not be in a predicament where the Chinese government or assets of the Chinese governments are buying U.S. land, farmland in particular, and it is a national security issue, not as far as what are they doing on that land, but also we need food, Steve, and if we don't have farmers who grow our fruits and vegetables and all the other things we need for our food supply, then, well, that's a national security issue, and that becomes a big, big problem, and that was one of my questions to Secretary Rollins in that cabinet meeting today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it becomes a big problem, and it becomes a long-term problem. If they can bring in, like we saw here in Michigan where I live, where they brought in fungus, did college students from China at the University of Michigan, that they can impact the corn crop or the wheat crop or the rice crop or all of them. Taking the food away from a powerful country makes it a less powerful country pretty quickly, I would think. Brian, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a big concern. I think until Brooke Rollins was here, this was only talked about online with the MAGA base. But now that we have what I would consider a great Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, coming from the America First Policy Institute, which I used to do a lot of work for and cover them. She's a good woman. She's got smart policy plans for that administration. And so today, I will say my biggest takeaway today, real quickly, Steve, was the art history lesson that President Trump gave the members of the media about the history of the cabinet room. It was brilliant. Since we're out of time, you can follow me on the social media at Brian Glenn TV. I plan on doing an extensive post on this. It was brilliant. Probably have never been done before in the history of the White House. And it was just an honor today to be in that cabinet room and watch President Trump peel back the curtain on the art and the history of that room. It was great, Steve.
All right, you got to follow Brian on social media to find out more. You got me. I'm going to go look, Brian, because I love history. You knew that. You tricked me into it. Brian Glenn, everybody. Yep. Brian, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. If you're stressed about back taxes, maybe you missed the April deadline, or your books are a mess, don't wait. The IRS is cracking down. Penalties add up fast, 5% a month, up to 25% just for not filing. But there's help. Tax Network USA can take the burden off your shoulders and stop the spiral before it gets worse. They've helped thousands of Americans, whether you're an employee, a small business owner, or haven't filed in years. Messy books? No problem. They've seen it all, and they know exactly how to clean it up. With direct access to powerful IRS programs and expert negotiators on your side, Tax Network USA knows how to win. You'll get a free consultation. If you qualify, they may even be able to help you reduce or eliminate what you owe. More importantly, they'll help you protect from wage garnishments or bank levies. Don't wait for the next IRS letter. Call 800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAB to talk to a real expert at Tax Network USA. Take the pressure off. Let Tax Network USA handle your tax issues. All right, after the break, we'll have a story that reminds us of just how wonderful America is, plus answers to our America's Voice question today. What are your thoughts on those attacks on those ICE facilities in Texas? We'll be right back. Well, every day we try to tell you what makes America wonderful in the hopes that we put a smile on your face before you go on with the rest of your day. Today's story comes to us from Pennsylvania's National Airport, where the employees turned the whole building upside down to find a woman's wedding ring. Her diamond was missing. April Schmidt recounts arriving at the airport from a business trip and going to reclaim her luggage when her finger caught an edge. Not thinking much about it, Schmidt went about her business and left the airport. And when she had idle time, she looked at her ring finger and found 4 prongs. No diamond. With this revelation, Schmidt went back to the airport, immediately went to the baggage claim area and frantically searched for the diamond with seemingly no avail. Schmidt's search caught the attention of airport staff, who went over to see what was going on. And as soon as Schmidt explained her plight, a small team of airport employees gathered together to help her find the diamond. And guess what? The search went on for a little while longer. And then an engineer, Sean Dumpsey, decided to crawl inside the conveyor belt and shine a light. And he saw a sparkle. It caught his eye. The diamond was swiftly returned to Schmidt, who was so thankful for the airport staff and time and patience. Stories like these show us how even a small gesture can go such a long way in making someone's day. And it reminds us, doesn't it? what makes America wonderful down there and all that. I bet it was dirty down there and filthy. Look at that little twinkle. Pretty cool, huh? That makes America wonderful. You get a smile on your face. That's the attempt every single day. Remember to fight the good fight and keep the faith. Listen, I'll be here tomorrow at 6 a.m. on the Steve Brewer Show to start the broadcast day for Real America's Voice. In the meantime, follow me on social media. Go follow me on X, and Facebook, and Instagram at Truth Social, of course. You'll have your question of the day there every day. And you can start your broadcast day here in Real America's Voice with me, like I said, 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, Monday through Friday, every day here, the Steve Brewer Show. And then I'll be back for America's Voice Live. Until then, my friends.
They tried to shut them up.
There's no guarantee to free speech.
They tried to cancel them.
Deplatforming works.
They even threw them in jail.
Peter Navarro,
Steve Bannon,
now in prison.
But they couldn't stop them.
It's not a prison bill that will ever shut me up.
They call them rebels.
Basket of deplorables.
They call them rogues.
They claim to guns or religion.
And they say they're outlaws.
These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
War Room presents Rebels, Rogues, and Outlaws.
You set out to take Vienna. Take Vienna!
The national bestseller by longtime Bannon producer Dan Fluette. Take a journey through the pictorial history of War Room in a culture that celebrates the weak. Show your support by standing with the rebels. Go to doitfluette.com or scan the QR code on your screen. Use the code RAV20 for 20% off your order. Stand with the rebels and never back down.
All right, folks, before we get to the markets, we have a really fantastic show for you today. Listen, I had the opportunity to sit down with not one but two secretaries of the cabinet of Donald Trump's administration, Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins and the U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Sat down with both of those folks. We have all that coming up for you in today's show. First, markets are closed. Take a look very quickly. Looks like a very quiet day in the market. 165 lower in the Dow. Everyone's waiting to see what's going on with these tariffs. Obviously, people don't know. S&P almost flat. Take a look at NASDAQ, up a touch. Earlier it was up a couple hundred points, backed off a little bit. But the ones we keep looking at, there's a problem. Oil up to $68.50 a barrel. Again, we've been talking about this for about $5 a barrel. We're going to talk a little bit of oil at the end of the show when we do the voicemails. And crypto had a very decent day today. Crypto inched up to 109,000.
Act
is co-founder of the Muslim Reform Movement and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Good friend of mine, I will say this, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Doc, really good to be doing TV with you again, just so the folks understand. We did a bunch of stuff, I guess, around, remember the Arab Spring 2010, 2011, when there was a lot of emotion, a lot of Arab emotion going on, a lot of bad things were happening around the world. Doc, you were really spot on then. I think, just give us a sense of what you think is happening, specifically like this incident, right? The guy takes a blowtorch, he also takes Molotov cocktails, and he burns people, some severely burned people. Any relationship, I mean, I will say, I would connect the dots to all the pro-Palestinian protesting that's going on in New York City and around the country. What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, Eric, and it's great to be with you again. And, this is the culmination of decades of...
Well, sorry about that. We lost you for a second. What I was saying was that this morning I had the opportunity, I was invited by the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, to attend an event. She spoke, is one of her food security bills that she's going to push to the president's desk. Pete Hegseth was there, Secretary of Defense. Pam Bondi was there, Attorney General of the United States. There was also Kristi Noem, the DHS Secretary, and also senators, Congress people, and people high up in the Trump administration. Pete Navarro was there as well. Fantastic outing. I want to show you a couple of these interviews. Brooke Rollins is up first. She's a wonderful agricultural secretary. Take a listen to this.
All right, folks, we're here with the wonderful Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins. Brooke, really great event. Thank you. Congratulations on the wonderful event. Can you tell the folks, the gents, how this group come together? It makes so much sense of what took everyone so long over the last 30, 40 years.
I know, it's amazing. Well, first of all, thank you for making the trip in. It's just incredible to have you. You're just such a warrior on everything that is good and right with freedom and liberty, so thank you for that. Today we talked about the existential threat to our American way of life through our foreign adversaries and their purchasing of American farmland, which is really the big one and the one everyone talks about. But there's a lot of other significant threats to agroterrorism, USDA potentially funding some overseas research that is against our best interests, the illegal activity and a lot of our programming like SNAP that goes to funding some of these illegal cartels. So today was, I think G.G. Thompson said, today's a great day to make hay, except it's really hot up there, but it was also a great day to make history. It is remarkable to me that no one's done this before. When I was building America First Policy Institute, this issue came on my radar, the Chinese purchasing of American farmland. So 3 years ago, we began to work on this, and that's where I started working with Kristi Noem, then the governor of South Dakota, and Sarah Sanders, the governor of Arkansas, that the governors in the states can move so much more quickly than the federal government. So realizing that there's a lot of good work they can do in it. But now the effort not only stays with the states, but moves to Donald Trump's government and Washington, D.C. And we're going to do everything we can to fix it.
We mentioned at the event that egg prices today just dipped below $2.50 a dozen. You know, we kind of talked about egg. Congratulations. And President Trump is quick to give you credit for that. But we know it's not just eggs. It's eggs that has become kind of the metaphor for inflation, food inflation.
That's right.
In fact, under your watch of the last 5-6 months, food inflation is coming down. Well, all of it is, but food specifically. How do you see it going forward?
Yeah, I thought that was such a great question you asked, because a lot of people don't realize that inflation is coming down, which is one of the president's biggest promises. The fact that it's coming down so quickly is remarkable after 4 years of complete, overspending and it's remarkable the leadership that was lacking, and I see it every day here at USDA under the Biden administration. So eggs is sort of you're right, is the symbol of all of it. But you think about when President Trump began to cast his vision 2 or 3 years ago when he decided to run again, which surprised almost everyone. Didn't surprise me, but surprised almost everyone. And the two big issues he talked about, securing the border and the cost of living, cost of groceries, et cetera. So to see his bold and courageous decisions that in our lifetimes at least, perhaps ever, have been made at this level from this White House without fail, over and over again, all these big decisions. But to see the market already reacting, even in times of uncertainty, we're in a big tariff renegotiation, as you know, some of the peace we're trying to bring about the world. These are major disruptors to a market and to an economy. But to see the economy, the job growth, the inflation reduction already happening within just a few months it's remarkable. But I'm really excited to see him and the promises made and the promises kept, and to be a little part of that.
You know, one of the things that people are concerned about, the Chinese government buying farmland, but also buying some of our biggest food processors, Smithfield Foods was mentioned.
Yeah,
it's an interesting dynamic. Is agriculture considered one of the industries that are now, or were they before, protected? Like a foreign government can't come in and buy a vast majority of our power supplies or our energy production. Is food in the same boat, or will it be?
It is not yet, but if we're able to do our job, it will be. And I think that was one of the really important takeaways from today. Nothing like this has ever happened before. We pulled 4 cabinet members together, multiples of governors, the Hill, to talk about how we've got to work together. These purchases under the free market by countries other than America that now control our food supply, this is not how we preserve for the next 250 years. There will be no America 500. We just started America 250 unless we can get our arms around this. And everyone asks me every day, you know, how are you doing? Or what's the hardest thing you have to do? And these jobs are not easy. Obviously, we're working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, nonstop. But for me, the biggest challenge is the time. We need more time, and we only have 3.5 years left now. So that's why we have to do everything we can while we're moving so fast, while we never sleep, because, you know, hopefully the Trump MAGA agenda continues for another 8 years past our time. But if it doesn't, what do we need to do now to ensure that we can make these changes that will ensure preservation of America?
2 quick policy questions, if I may. Sure. What's our ethanol policy? What's it now and going forward? If folks don't know, ethanol is produced from our corn supply. So going forward, what is Brooke Rawls' vision for ethanol?
Well, I think the president has been extremely unequivocal in his support for ethanol. And you can have a lot of policy disagreements, but at the end of the day, what it has meant for our row croppers, our corn farmers all over the Midwest, how it has boosted really the agriculture industry, especially even the livestock industry is a huge beneficiary because the amount of corn that is now grown. Having ethanol is an important part of our national security and our energy security play. You know, Doug Burgum and Chris Wright are kind of our dynamic duo on energy in the cabinet, and they have made a huge deal about ethanol and the importance of it. I was in the UK on a trade mission just a few weeks ago, and the president was able to negotiate a $0 tariff on our ethanol into the UK. That's extremely important because Europe and the UK had this net zero goal, which, you know, here in America we think's not that smart, but if they want to have their net zero goal, the only way they get there is using American ethanol, which is a huge, huge deal for our farmers and ranchers. Yeah.
Another quick policy question. Last question. We want to wrap it up. I guess the question is, well, let's do this other question. Deregulation is what come from the state of Illinois, a lot of farmland in Illinois. Most farmers will tell you the book to produce a tomato is this big, right? Rolling back some of the regs and what's the timeline on that?
Well, again, the president has, I think about back to 2015 when he came down the escalator, and most of us are like, who? Wait, he's a reality TV billionaire from New York. What was this, like a 2-week step to possibly help his TV ratings? Of course, most of us at the time didn't know him or his heart or his courage or his basically his Lion's heart for America, which is what it is. But the one thing that is very clear to me from that time 10 years ago was he was talking about deregulation 10 years ago. And having been a policy person in Texas and helped move Texas towards more freedom, less government, for me, that was my love language. I'm like, no one in America is going to get excited about 2 for 1 and blah, blah. And then I'd watch him in these rallies and he'd say, for every 1 new regulation, if I'm elected, 2 are going out the door. And everyone would be like, ah. And I thought, this man, whom I've never met, has somehow made deregulation cool. And I have no idea how he did it, but this is going to change the country forever. So to see what we were able to accomplish in the first term on it, was really just the beginning. We're just kind of figuring out how to do it. My organization, think tanks in the intervening 4 years, really began to compile a lot of those lists. That's why you've seen such active movement at the beginning of administration rather than in the middle or at the end. In agriculture, I'm not sure there is a more important job for us than to get rid of the thousands upon thousands of regulations that are strangling our farmers and our
bringing the cost of our food down.
That's exactly right for America. And then the food security, first via national security, what that does for that.
Well, Secretary Rollins has been very generous with her time. She got a cabinet meeting.
And a cabinet meeting right now. Exactly.
Give the president our best.
We sure will. Thank you. You're wonderful.
Great, Judy.
So that was really cool. That was in Brooke Rollins' office at USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Wonderful, wonderful event today. All right, folks. We've seen bold moves out of Washington since President Trump took office. Fast action, real results. But there's one thing you can't outsource to the government, ever. It doesn't matter who's president. And it's looking out for your own financial future. If you've watched what's happening lately, rising inflation, out of control debt, global uncertainty for sure, you know it's time to diversify. And that's why I personally trust Birch Gold Group. Gold has surged, get this, more than 40% in the last 12 months alone. Central banks around the world are buying gold at record levels. Why? Because gold holds value, while paper money simply doesn't. With Birch Gold, it's easy to convert any IRA or 401k into a gold IRA, or you know what you can do? You can actually buy physical gold bars, gold coins, store it at home. Like I do. That's exactly what I do. They walk you through every single step. Just text the word America to 989898 to get your free info kit on gold. There's no cost, no obligation, just smart information. Again, text that word America to 989898. Take control now of your financial future. Okay, coming up, a rare opportunity, certainly. This is a very, very cool interview. I had a great moment in a few minutes, chat with the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. You don't want to miss it. Right after the break, maybe a little bit later in the show, but stick around. We have a lot more. know, the Democrats, that lunatic left group of politicians that continue to mess with ICE, immigration and customs enforcement, while they're trying to work. How is this even allowed? Unfortunately, the bluer the area, the more tolerable this becomes. Democrats all over the country have been encouraged and enabled, by the way, by the deranged leaders to interfere with ICE agents as they're carrying out the president's orders and, frankly, the freaking law of the land. In L.A., Karen Bass, mayor, put herself on the front lines and actually did some of the obstruction herself. Watch this.
I am going to say, Mayor Bass, I need to get my phone. We're departing. Okay. All right. Mayor Bass. Mayor Bass.
Any comment, Mayor Bass?
Thank you.
Mayor Bass, any comment?
Yes, my comment is they need to leave, and they need to leave right now. They need to leave because this is unacceptable.
Who did you speak with?
Just wait and see.
Mayor Bass,
They will be leaving soon.
Mayor Bass, who did you speak with on the phone just now? Who did you speak with on the phone?
I had a pistol.
Wow.
I think she should be brought up on charges. I think she's obstructing justice, don't you? I mean, justice. They're trying to catch, detain, and deport illegals. That's the law. You get in front of that, you're obstructing justice. Karen Bass, mayor of L.A. The one-sided war between the insane liberals and Donald Trump's ICE is starting to get out of control. It's getting out of control further and further every day. Angry TikTokers are one thing, but in Texas, a group of 12 Democrats just got slapped with attempted murder charges after they ambushed a group of working ICE officers. Behold.
We're here to tell you that late at night on July 4th, Friday night at approximately 10:37 p.m. at the Prairieland ICE Detention Center in Alvarado, Texas, 10 to 12 individuals dressed in black military-style clothing began shooting fireworks and engaging in acts of vandalism at the facility. And this was part of an organized attack. Today, my office has charged 10 individuals with 3 counts of attempted murder of a federal officer. Each of the 10 are also charged with 3 counts of discharging a firearm in relation to a crime of violence. Each of these defendants faces a mandatory prison term of 10 years and up to life in prison.
Now that's what I'm talking about. Same thing. Arrest the mayor of L.A. She did the same thing, essentially. Crazy Jazzy Jasmine Crockett using the devastating floods in Texas as ammunition for her latest climate change argument. Someone had to do it. You'd think they'd wait until all the bodies are recovered, though. Would you listen to this absolute lunatic?
Don't look at this and think, oh, it's Texas, and so it's not my issue. I want y'all to understand that anything that happens at any place in this country could easily happen at your front door, from the immigration raids to the terrible weather that we know we experience because climate change really is real. It is unfortunate that we are not investing more to make sure that we can better understand climate change and do the things that we need to do. There was a little thing called the Inflation Reduction Act that was really helping us to do our part to hopefully stop the planet from heating up a little bit.
You know, Rahm Emanuel said during President Obama's first term, never let a good crisis go to waste. I mean, we're talking 90, 100 people dead, still pulling fishing bodies out of rivers and swamps. And this clown, this idiot, we even want to call her but by the way, she's a Texas congresswoman, by the way. Jasmine Crockett wants to start using this tragedy as a platform for climate change. Brilliant. Good luck in 2028. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just nominated President Donald Trump, for a Nobel Peace Prize. Of course, he'll never actually win the award because too much of the world sides with the media and believes everything that they hear about Donald Trump without forming a single opinion of their own. But with that said, here's Netanyahu again recognizing Trump's heroics in the Middle East and elsewhere.
The president has already realized great opportunities. He forged the Abraham Accords. He's forging peace as we speak in one country and one region after the other. So I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know. Well, thank you very much. Coming from you in particular, this is very meaningful. Thank you very much, baby.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
I mean, don't you think Trump should get the Peace Prize? I mean, no matter what happens going forward, he got Israel and Iran or Hezbollah, Hamas, whoever the proxies were, to shut up, to stand down. He got a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. He got Gaza quiet, at least for a time being. It hasn't been as quiet in years, in decades maybe. I'm not sure it's going to last, but he deserves credit for that, certainly more than Barack Obama, who got the Peace Prize. And then don't forget what he's trying to do with Ukraine and Russia. He's trying to do the same thing. President Trump wants peace around the world. Isn't that what the Nobel Peace Prize should be stated for? The most powerful human being on the planet pushing peace, not more war. Even Donald Trump knows that he stands almost no shot at ever winning a Nobel Peace Prize. It's not about qualifications. Clearly, he would win if it were. It's about hatred and the inexplicable amount of hate that the Democrats have for this very successful president and presidency. Listen to Trump's comments on his Peace Prize nomination potentially.
Neil Dunn, a lot of people say that the men who managed to do that should get a Nobel Peace Prize. Do you think that you'll be able to get all the hostages back home? And what would happen if you hear from the Israelis?
They will never give me a Nobel Peace Prize.
What would happen? What would happen if the Israelis?
I deserve it, but they will never give it to me.
He knows they're not going to do it. Nobel Peace Prize, we talked about yesterday with John Solomon. The Nobel Committee is just as liberal as every single New York Times newspaper author. Mad Dog, skip one down. Let's go to CNN not totally sold on the White House's latest story. Yeah, one before that. There you go. Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper is not so sure that he believes the Epstein story. Listen quickly.
Alex, I have to say, I'm with the people that still have questions about this. I kind of don't buy the nothing to see here. And I don't know that the Justice Department helped their case. They released this video. Let's show it. It shows no one entered the area surrounding Epstein's cell in the hours before he died. But there's something significant about this videotape. What is it?
Well, here's one thing that some people on the internet are picking up on, which is that there is about a minute missing between 11:58 p.m., 58 seconds, and 12 a.m., the night that Epstein was apparently killed or died.
Jake Tapper just said he's not buying the nothing to see here from the White House, right? Isn't this the same Jake Tapper who told us for 4 years nothing to see here when we're talking about Joe Biden's mental decline? I think so. Jake, you are a freaking hypocrite, my friend. Turn in your journalism card. All right, moving on. Recently, the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices recommended removing vaccines that contain mercury. To delve deeper into this, let's bring in Chief of Maternal and Prenatal Health at the wellness company, Dr. James Thorpe. Dr. Thorpe, why was removing mercury from vaccines even remotely controversial? I'm told not to eat too much tuna because I'll get mercury poisoning.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for having me back on, Eric. I think that the main criticism is that really in a deceptive sort of way, the CDC and FDA walked back and hid the dangers of mercury in the early part of this century, after the turn of the century, and removed thimerosal, but they never acknowledged it. Thimerosal contains mercury. Now, there are still multi-dose vials of influenza vaccine that do contain the mercury, substantial amounts, in my opinion. So that's a significant issue. I think that everybody should avoid the multi-dose vials of influenza vaccine. You should probably avoid the influenza vaccine to begin with, because the recent studies show that it increases the risk of getting flu or other respiratory viral illnesses.
Doc, with RFK Jr., he's very much against the COVID-19 vaccine. I guess he's not against all vaccine, but certainly this one. I think a lot of us realized early on that we were right, they were wrong. The science, trust the science. Remember that BS? I'll call it what it is. Can we finally get away from a COVID-19 vaccine or any sort of mandatory vaccines going forward?
Well, I don't think that's very likely in the near future. As you know, Dr. Peter McCullough and I recently testified just 3 weeks ago in the United States Senate And, this whole issue of the dangers of the vaccine and my expertise, especially in pregnancy, Senator Blumenthal sat up there and said that the COVID-19 vaccine has saved millions of American lives. Obviously fraud, obviously false. So Secretary Bobby Kennedy is in the belly of the beast. And, what did he say when he was challenged with a question? Do you think the COVID-19 vaccines have saved more people than they've killed? And what did he say? He said, quote, "My opinion is irrelevant," end quote. Clearly he's got a lot of forces coming at him. As you know, there is millions of dollars put up to try to take him out of office from other people in the government. That's a great concern.
Very quickly, Doc, there's, a whole bunch of people talking about bird flu. Now, I had Brooke Rollins on the show earlier, went and talked to her about egg prices finally coming down. Just give us a quick 30-second update on where are we with bird flu, and specifically, are chickens and eggs safe for us to eat?
Yes, they are. And I'll tell you where we are with the bird flu. People like you and us at the Wellness Company, we popped that balloon before it ever got any traction. You and us at the Wellness Company, myself and others, the rest of the board, have popped that balloon, and we beat the deep state and those that want to push the vaccine. There's nothing there, and it went flat. There's no more talk about it because we deflated that lie.
We cracked that egg. We scrambled those eggs. A lot of metaphors to do there. Dr. James Thorpe of the Wellness Company. Thank you again, my friend. Very, very good information. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, stick around because coming up later in the show, U.S. Secretary of Defense, a rare interview. Pete Hegseth and I sat down for a chat. You don't want to miss it. Back in 2.5. The DOJ, the FBI working with the swamp. Folks, it's hard to explain the level of corruption, the depths of low these people sunk. in order to try to put an end to President Trump's career before he was elected and before we got a new director of the FBI and a new attorney general, Obama, Brennan, Clinton, Comey, Biden. And they never thought President Trump would win again. They did everything in their power to make sure it didn't happen, didn't they? The incessant lawfare, the slander, the defamation.
Biden wanted me in here, okay? He wanted me. It didn't work out that way, but he wanted me in here.
Yeah, well, they thought after all of that, there's no way Trump would win, just like they insisted he wasn't going to win the first time.
He's not going to be president. He is not, Donald Trump is not going to be president of the United States. Take it to the bank. Okay. I guarantee it.
All right.
I think if he becomes the president here, make it great, because the states is already great.
I think that man will be president of the United States right about the time that spaceships come down filled with dinosaurs and red capes.
On that note, Tom.
Take it from me. How about that?
Cheers, Tom.
And then, of course, there's Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been saying that he will run for president as a Republican.
That soundbite went on for a while. I can't stand listening to these clowns. I could watch them, these idiots, for hours, but they start to make you nauseated. But there's a reason that we ended it right there, because he went on to talk about Obama. Because Obama wasn't just saying those things out loud to the press. These people were actively working behind the swampy scenes to try and make sure Trump was never going to be president again. And now, thanks to the fact that President Trump did, in fact, win the White House yet again, we're finally going to get to understand just how deep the corruption on the left was. Yep, it's the find out portion. F-A-F-O, find out, of the festivities. It smells like some good old-fashioned retribution o'clock. The president has a knack for saying things, doesn't he? Words are never minced with President Trump. And because of that, and that off-the-cuff, unfiltered nature of his banter, they try very hard to discredit what he says. Here's a case in point.
President Obama was a terrible president. President Biden was the worst president in the history of our country. President Bush should not have gone into the Middle East and blown the place up. So I don't give him high marks either.
Just a normal day in the life. So when President Trump insisted his first campaign was spied on, CBS News' Leslie Stahl insisted it wasn't true, clearly having received her marching orders to cover for Barack Hussein Obama.
So the biggest scandal was when they spied on my campaign. They spied on my campaign.
There's no real evidence of that.
Of course there is. No. It's all over the place. Leslie,
Sir,
they spied on my campaign and they got caught.
Can I?
Quick anecdote. That interview happened on October 20th of 2020, about a week and a half or so before the election of 2020. And I had an interview with Trump slated right after Leslie Stahl. She ticked him off so much, he was breathing fire by the time we were doing our interview. And I had an hour with the guy, and believe me, he was really ticked off. But notice how Leslie Stahl started saying there's no evidence. Right off the top, there's no evidence. Stopped herself and instead says there's no real evidence. What does that even mean, Leslie Stahl? That's just the kind of thing you might say if you knew that there's, I don't know, a chance it could be true. And now we know that it was true. She was completely wrong. Trump was right. There was evidence, but the corruption doesn't stop or end right there. It turns out that Barack Obama was the man behind the curtain, the Russian collusion mastermind, after all. A bombshell new CIA review looked at the Obama administration's spy agency's assessment of the 2016 election and the possibility that Russia interfered to help Donald Trump. They went from Russian interfered to help to they're nuts on the left. Well, that investigation was deliberately corrupted by our own CIA and FBI to frame a sitting president and accuse him of treason. Then CIA Director John Brennan, wackadoo, complete wackadoo, moron, lied to Congress, remember that? Lied to the Senate panel under oath. One of the most corrupt human beings ever to work for the government. Remember that he was one of those 51 members of the so-called intelligence community who insisted that the Hunter Biden laptop was just a Russian disinformation campaign. Ha! So Brennan and FBI Director James Comey, by the way, who just called for 8647 written in the sand, essentially calling for likely, some people would say, the assassination of President Trump. Anyway, those two jackals knew from the get-go that it wasn't real. And yet they proceeded anyway. All the three-letter agencies manufactured these Trump collusion reports on Obama's orders. Obama, Hillary, Brennan, Comey, they all tried to frame the sitting president for treason on a completely fabricated report. No evidence and falsified testimonies from our own CIA intelligence agencies and, by the way, our own FBI. Strzok and Page, remember those two clowns? The great Tom Sowell said this about Obama, and I'm quoting, Barack Obama's political genius is his ability to say things that will sound good to people who've not followed the issues in any detail, regardless of how obviously fraudulent what he says may be to those who have, meaning who have been following along. He doesn't just say things, though, does he? He's a corruption artist, Obama is, to the extreme, and it's high time for some accountability. But wait, there's a little bit more. Act now. Documents reveal that the FBI interfered with the investigation on Chinese meddling in the 2020 election to cover for who? Christopher Wray, the FBI, former FBI director. The FBI knew about China's interference, but covered it up and blocked the probe to protect Wray, who insisted that China wasn't involved. Meanwhile, Wray doubled down on further Russian collusion.
And I think the intelligence community has assessed this publicly primarily to denigrate Vice President Biden and what the Russians see as kind of an anti-Russian establishment. That's essentially what we're seeing in 2020.
So I'm no expert in body language, but right there, he looked awfully uncomfortable, maybe like someone whom, I don't know, maybe lying, probably. They never thought Trump would win again. They did everything in their power to stop it because they knew investigations were coming if he did win. This is what the president is up against. Kash Patel, Dan Bongino are digging in. And we are still only about 6 months into the administration, maybe even a little less, because no one has been held accountable, but they will be. They've been working hard to try to regain trust in the DOJ and the FBI. They're retooling both of those agencies, but the recent dead end around the Epstein case and the promise to reveal documents and information has been a major setback to that mission, to say the least. It's time to start sending these traitors to prison. The people demand it. And we'll never fully trust our government again until there's accountability with consequences. Send Brennan, Clapper, Comey behind bars. Coming up later in the show, stick around just a little bit, just hang in. It's going to be worth it. Trust me, it's going to be worth it. The show. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth joins us. You don't want to miss it. We're back in 2.5 minutes. agree, folks. I realize there are many choices when it comes to who you choose for your cell phone service, and there are new ones popping up all the time. But here's the truth. There's only one that boldly stands in the gap for every single American that believes that freedom is worth fighting for, and that's Patriot Mobile. For more than 12 years, Patriot Mobile has been on the front lines fighting for our God-given rights. God-given rights, folks. Not some founding thought, our God-given rights and freedoms, while also providing exceptional nationwide cell service with access to all three of the major networks. Don't just take my word for it. Ask the hundreds of thousands of Americans who've made the switch and are now supporting causes they believe in simply by joining Patriot Mobile. Switching is easier than ever. Activate in minutes from the comfort of your own home. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Patriot Mobile's all U.S.-based support team is standing by to take care of you. Call 972-PATRIOT today, 972-PATRIOT. Call that number or go to patriotmobile.com/RAV. Patriotmobile.com/RAV. Use promo code RAV for a free month of service. That's patriotmobile.com/RAV or call 972-PATRIOT and make the switch today. Now, folks, I got to tell you, I don't have my control room right now. The cord is shot or something. I hear we have Governor Greg Abbott in Texas. If we do, take it, Mad Dog. If not, we'll come back.
Walk up to them and give them the magic words that will make them suddenly feel healed. We know that they need grief counselors. We have 5 organizations that together are providing dozens of grief counselors for all of the affected family members around here. It's so important at times like this for family members to access that grief counseling so they can have their mental and emotional health needs addressed in what may be the most challenging time of their lives. Something else that's a help as we begin the process of helping places like the Hunt store, the local community, Hunt, Texas, be able to rebuild. One thing that is speeding that recovery was the immediate granting of the major master declaration that was granted by President Trump. It immediately opened not only access to more funding, but also access to more resources to be able to more quickly, more effectively respond to this storm. That includes debris removal, which has already begun. It includes assistance for individuals who are eligible to apply. And the director of Texas Division of Emergency Management will explain more about that in a second. But there are 2 categories of people or entities that there is money available to assist. One are individuals affected by the storm. Another are public entities like the town of Hunt, like the town of Kerrville, like the county of Kerr, etc. They may have needs with regard to roads or utilities, whatever the case may be. Now the assistance is available for them to more effectively and more quickly address that. With regard to roads, anybody who's driven around here knows that there are some roads that need repairs. The Texas Department of Public Safety is working 24/7 to make sure they're going to be getting these roads repaired and passable as quickly as possible. Going back to President Trump, he and I spoke again this morning, and he could not stop talking about how sad he was for all the little girls who've lost their life. He recounted his own understanding of what happened with what was really a tsunami wave of wall of water that swept too many of them away. And he cares a lot about those young ladies. And he wants to step up and make sure that any need that we have here in Texas is going to be met very quickly. And he's already done that by helping to provide listen, I've been dealing with events like this for 10 years. Never have I seen someone respond as quickly and as effectively as what Secretary Noem did. Also, while coming over here, I received this text from Secretary Kennedy. It says the following. It says, Governor Abbott, it's Secretary Robert Kennedy. It says, we are set to declare a public health emergency for the Texas Hill Country flash floods. This will make it easier for healthcare and mental health providers from out of state to help both by traveling to the area and by telemedicine. Please let us know where we can be most helpful, which I will let him know. But I just wanted you to know about that new update. Now I would like to turn things over to the Speaker of the Texas House, Dustin Burrows.
Thank you, Governor. First, to the members of the community and all those who've been impacted, the survivors, those who've lost loved ones, I know there's not any adequate words any of us can express to share our care and concern. But I want to promise you, every person in this state, every tip of it, we have held you in our thoughts, in our prayers, and we will continue to do so as you go through this. And you take care of what I know all Texans can endure. I had the opportunity to fly with Governor Abbott today over the damaged area. It is hard to comprehend the amount of water that came through in such a short period of time. It is unimaginable what the victims and survivors went through as they were faced with that, and we heard the stories about that. And looking at the debris and looking at the problems and all of the damage that's been done, I know there's a long road to recovery. But through that, we saw some silver linings. We saw Texas flags being flown proudly because we know people of this state are resilient. We saw people from all over the state coming together and working and volunteering and trying to begin helping rebuild and continuing with the search and recovery efforts. I have had members of the Texas House from all over the state looking for ways to help. You have a great local representative with West Verdell, but I promise you, every Texan, all 150 members of the Texas House have been looking for ways to help, whether it's helping to raise money or wanting to do things. They are committed to it. I want to thank Governor Abbott for saying that we will address these issues in a special session in 2 weeks. And I want to assure you, the Texas House will be organized, we will be ready, and we stand willing and able to listen to the community and experts and do all that we can to help address it from this perspective. So thank you all very much for the opportunity. I'll turn over the microphone.
This is the kind of event that the Speaker of the House would have come to in an ordinary situation. When you consider the fact that we're going to start a special session 2 Mondays from now, a special session that will have at the top of its agenda helping communities like in Kirk County and Kendall County, as well as in Central Texas and the Big Country, all areas affected by the floods of the past week. Those issues are going to be on the agenda for the state to address from top to bottom. We want to make sure that when we end that session, we end it making sure these communities are better, more resilient, and have the resources that they need for the next chapter of their lives. Now we have the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, Freeman Martin.
Governor, thank you. The governor said it. We have 109 fatalities and 161 missing. Every asset and resource that the Department of Public Safety has is being used on this response. We have 258 people just from DPS assigned here in Kerrville. They're from the Highway Patrol, the Tactical Marine Unit, Criminal Investigators, Texas Rangers, SWAT, IOD, and ICT, and Victim Services. And you ask, well, what do all these do? Everybody does something different. Everybody understands search and rescue. When the governor mentioned 161 missing, the city of Kerrville stood up a line that if you can't get a hold of a loved one, if they're missing in the Kerrville area, call this number. That number grew to several hundred. These analysts worked with Kerr County Sheriff's Department and the Kerrville Police Department to narrow that down. People that have been identified as deceased, people who have been found alive, deconflicted, the numbers that have been reported twice, and we are still down to 161 missing. All I can tell you is there's nothing to celebrate about how well we've done this far, but there's a lot of work to be done. and we're thankful that the Speaker standing behind us and the Governor, the Texas Legislature has funded us, and we're properly staffed and equipped to respond to this. Just this last session, a few weeks ago, we were given 6 replacement helicopters and 1 fixed wing. That is exactly what we use to respond to these. I'll tell you another thing. We have plenty of resources, but at the same time, we're not turning down one resource until we recover every last person on this list of 161. So we have FBI, DEA, HSI, the United States Border Patrol, the United States Coast Guard, everybody working together under a unified command, and we won't stop until we finish. A couple of things. Right now in Burnett County, we have 3 Zodiac boats and 26 DPS personnel from the Tactical Marine Unit and the Texas Highway Patrol continuing searching. I'm in constant communication with the Travis County Sheriff, Sally Hernandez. They are helping us at the medical examiner's office, and at the same time, they have as many as 10 people that are missing from Travis County. As we pulled in the parking lot, I got off the phone with the Williamson County. They recovered 3 people that were swept away, and just minutes ago, they recovered their last victim in Williamson County. There's a lot of work to be done in Kirk County and Kendall County. We will continue to grow this and add additional agencies as we go forward. But the governor's right. We won't stop until every last body is recovered, alive or not. So thank you very much. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Sheer tragedy going on in the state of Texas, and our hearts, prayers, and thoughts go out to the folks in Texas and everyone who's associated with that. Okay, guys, this is what you've been waiting for. I wanted to get this to you, make sure we got this in before the end of the show. A very rare interview with Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. Great guy, former colleague of mine. Behold, we'll take you right to the end of the show with this. Watch.
So, Secretary of Defense, I also have to say, my friend, good to see you. Pete, that feels really, really good. One event here, we're doing a whole show special on what's going on today at the USDA. How is the Defense Department involved in this? I know we're going to have a little bit of presentation in a minute, but just tell us how the defense got involved.
Well, first of all, thanks for all the great work you do for going on offense and defense for us and fighting the fight. It means a lot, and we appreciate it. This event today, food security, water security, energy security is national security. And the fact that, I'll probably say this today, but you have a Department of Homeland Security that actually cares about Homeland Security. You have a Department of Justice that actually cares about justice. You have a Department of Defense here who looks around at our military installations and says, what's around them? Who could have nefarious intentions about that? Today happens to be about farmland, which is one portion of it. Who owns it? But where are they from? What are their intentions? What do they have access to? And so when we're looking at reliable food sources, reliable water sources, reliable energy sources for our installations and basing, whether at CONUS or around the world, that's a priority for the Secretary of Defense and the Department of Defense. So when Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of Agriculture, called and said, we're doing this, I said, I'll be there no matter what. And the Defense Department's part of the planning and making sure we focus on it.
This is amazing. I got that flyer Brooke sent in, and I was like, wow, this makes so much sense. You have ag, which food security, obviously the number one issue, defense, Christine on DHS, and Bonnie, Attorney General. Like, it's so logical why it hasn't ever been done.
Well, because they haven't actually put America first before. And that's what President Trump does and reminds us of. We're here for the citizens of the country who deserve a government that represents them and protects them, that looks around the corner at what the threats might be, doesn't care about what the chattering class in Washington says, what the folks here say. What do Americans care about? And they want to know that our military is capable and willing to defend the homeland. I mean, think about it. We didn't defend the homeland at all. The Homeland Security Director facilitated an invasion. The Defense Department did nothing. It's the opposite now, and that's because of the president's leadership.
There is a massive concern by a lot of people, MAGA certainly, and others. Every American should be concerned about the Chinese purchasing farmland, specifically volumes of farmland, and then even more relevant to you, sir, farmland near military base.
Yeah.
What are we doing to stop?
Well, that's what this is meant to get at, is to evaluate, understand, look at intentions, look at who's buying it, how much land are they buying, why are they buying, why is this person buying? It just happens to be around all these military installations. If we're not looking at it, that'll happen underneath our noses. So this is something I think a lot of us have talked about for years, seeing developing, but the government's never been focused on, we are now. And this event is meant to showcase that this will be a priority.
You know, you bring up a very important point. There's a lot of things, you know, we were former colleagues of ours, and a lot of things we talk about on conservative side of the media spectrum. You're on the good side. Were we far off?
Sometimes we're a little off, but mostly over the target on the big stuff. There are moments when an event's going on and I realize, man, when I was talking on that TV, I was probably way off in those moments because you're having to speculate early, right? That's so we can get in the business. There's breaking news happening, what's happening, what might be happening, but that's understandable and totally forgivable. But on the big muscle movements of what the country should be paying attention to, I think your instincts, my instincts, those that love the country are usually right there. And the question is, do you then have the courage when you're in that stance to actually do it? Because this town is built to deter doers from doing the right thing because they want the status quo to protection. And that's all it takes in those
You are doers, and you do a great job. You do just a crushing job. You guys are doing amazing things. So we get the Chinese, we get them in order. The other issue is our private entities buying out too much. I'll tell you what's a big concern for a lot of folks: the death tax. So a farmer owns this very valuable piece of land that maybe turns profit, feeds his family very well, sends his kid to college, but upon the death of the owner, sometimes they can't afford the taxes to drop it down to the next level. Of your thoughts?
One big beautiful bill. I mean, the president helped address that reality, generational wealth, but also if you are cash poor and land rich and you don't have any options, then who sweeps in to buy that? And it creates opportunity, generational opportunity that overturns what Americans might want to be investing in their own soil and their own land. And it's, again, something that may not have political payoff, but that's not what it's about for people.
I know you got to go, but last question very quick. Yeah, promise. Very quickly. If the Chinese spy balloon entered the United States airspace in Minnesota, how long would it take for the Defense Department to knock it down? Would it take a whole week like it did Joe?
I know because I trained there at Camp Ripley in northern Minnesota. There's got to be a fighter jet up there capable of interdicting it immediately. So it would be a matter of minutes, I would imagine. Hours if we're off our game, but not days like that. I mean, they wanted to hide it. They wanted to allow it. If not for, it took them a week. Well, if not for what the news media exposed, they wouldn't have done anything about it. They wanted to allow it to float over the country. They were exposed. We just take the exact opposite view. China understands that too. We're being quiet but strong, and an action will be taken immediately.
I just want to talk about Pete. I know you're busy. I need her, Mr. Secretary. Appreciate you.
Call me whenever you want.
America loves you. America loves you. Well, it was great. We had a great couple of interviews with two cabinet secretaries of the Trump administration today, folks. Brooke Rollins, Secretary of Agriculture, and that right there, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. Let me know what you think. Put up that number, Mad Dog, if you don't mind, 888-601-0032. We'll read some of them tomorrow. Let me know what you think about both of those interviews, about the show. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. I listen to as many as I can. I want to say all of them, but you hit me up with like 500 on Friday. 500. I got through about half of them. I'm still working on them. I try and listen to every single one of them. Let me know, what are your thoughts on food security, the Chinese buying up our farmlands and such, and having a great group like the Defense Department, the Justice Department, Agriculture Department, and Homeland Security all working together to make sure that the Chinese do not steal our food security right out from under us. Steve Bannon, War Room, is coming up in just a couple of seconds. Have a great show. Hey, Steve, have a wonderful show. Talk to you again soon. I'm in D.C. I'll be back in Florida.
So I'm going to talk about two different things. The first part of your question, and that is an investigation. We know a special session's coming in about 10 days. That's where, I would say where it begins. Candidly, those investigations will begin by both the House and Senate before we go into session. So probably beginning later this week or the early part of next week, there'll be committees formed that are already kind of working on ideas about ways to address this.